Shellshock presents.
Ready?
Sharing with Shellshock Season 4.
New Age of Heroes.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and here we are with a new episode. This week we are going to be talking about Nickelodeon. So we got 3 returning guests tonight. We got Rick from the D-Pad. Welcome.
Hello, good to be here.
Yes, good to have you. And next up is Mr. Ben. Welcome back.
Up, y'all? How's it going?
Yeah. And we also have EpicMan. EpicMan, you there?
Yeah, hey man. Well, how's it going, man? Good to be here again.
Good to have you. Welcome back. We're gonna be talking. We're gonna be talking about a lot of Nickelodeon tonight. But first, originally we had another guest that was gonna join us, Kurt Dog, but he was not able to make it, so it will just be the 4 of us tonight. So, Kurt, if you're watching, I hope that things go well for you soon, and it would have been great to have you on as well. I'll have you on again in the future. In the meantime, so before we get started, Rick, remind everybody what type of content you do.
Yeah, so I run a variety multi-person channel called the D-Pad. We do a little bit of everything, but our biggest thing is franchise plays. We take an entire IP from start to finish across everything they've released, and it takes forever, and it's a really great time. If you know us from anywhere out in the world, it is probably from A Brief History of Michael Jackson's Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and possibly a couple other. There's a few others that we did a lot of Mega Man Fully Charged coverage back when that was brand new, and that got a lot of eyeballs too. So
Yep.
yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Mr. Ben? What type of content do you do?
I'm a variety streamer. I focus majorly on Nintendo and RPGs, but I do branch out from time to time for other stuff. I sometimes play Sony PlayStation games. I sometimes play Steam stuff. Pretty much wherever.
Mm-hmm. All right, sounds good. What about you, Epic Man? What type of content do you do?
For me, I do a bunch of variety of games with Nintendo on PC and PlayStation, but mostly Nintendo, like with Splatoon being one of my all-time favorites. So that's what I do mostly. But yeah, I do mostly just about gaming content, and even sometimes I would just talk about anime as well because I love anime. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do on my end.
Mm-hmm. All right, sounds good. All right, so in terms of everything right now, so Nickelodeon has been around since 1979. It was originally not owned by Paramount or Viacom, but it originally it was owned by Warner Brothers of all companies. But then at some point in the 80s, they split off because it wasn't really making money. Nickelodeon was not really doing that great on its own until it had its first major hit, which was Double Dare, which ended up becoming one of the biggest shows. Granted, they've had some other shows that were some hits. Before Double Dare, their biggest hit was there was a show called Pinwheel, and there was also You Can't Do That on Television, which is where the slime came from. So yeah, that show was
Remember that?
that show was famous for the slime. Whenever people say I don't know, all of a sudden the slime would just come out of nowhere and just land on you. Which
I was just about to say that. Wasn't that whenever someone said that phrase?
Yes, they would even say that it would end up becoming an actual Nickelodeon tradition. Whenever anybody would get say I don't know, especially the Nickelodeon's Kids Choice Awards.
Mm-hmm. Yep, indeed.
So yeah, they would also pick up some really big syndicated cartoons or other shows, because originally the type of shows they wanted to get was shows you could not get anywhere else, that you would only see in Nickelodeon at the time. But then they would get big shows. They would get like Inspector Gadget. They would get Heathcliff. They would later get some other shows like Muppet Babies, Beetlejuice, Tiny Toon Adventures, and all like Animaniacs, Garfield and Friends. Although now they own Garfield, they own Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
I think they also own the Winx Club. They bought a pretty decent amount of IPs. And then, like, they launched Nicktoons in 1991 with 3 shows with Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. And then they would release multiple shows over the years. They would have Snick. They would have some really good live-action shows like Clarissa Explains It All that. The Adventures of Pete and Pete, Keenan and Kel, and the list goes on and on. To start things off, Rick, when did you first start watching Nickelodeon?
Early enough that I don't really remember exactly when it was. I literally pulled up the Wikipedia page because I'm like, I'm going to find the first shows that are on the list that I recognize. And they're literally the first shows on Nickelodeon's lineup. Like, I didn't watch a ton of like The Adventures of Pete and Pete, but I watched Hey Dude. I watched Clarissa Explains It All.
Yep.
I watched Doug. Like, basically everything from that early, like, 1990, 1991 slate for, like, basically that whole decade is where I was, like, really locked in on Nickelodeon. So I guess I would imagine somewhere around, like, 1991, which would have been before I actually started, like, going to school.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Ben?
My answer is actually kind of the same as Rick's. Pretty much. I don't remember the exact year, but I remember I was around 4 or 5. So it must have been around 1990, 1991 as well. Because I remember Hey Dude, I remember Salute Your Shorts, I remember Pete and Pete. I remember Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I remember Double Dare. I was more into the game shows than I was the actual like cartoons. So like Double Dare, Nickelodeon Guts, Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yep.
I remember Mark Summers didn't just do Double Dare; he also did another like variety show called "What Would You Do?"
Yep. I remember that too.
That was really good.
There was also
That
the Wild
wall
and
at
Crazy
the end.
Kids. Yeah, the wall. Yeah, the wall at the end. I remember the wall. Yep.
Yep.
Wild and Crazy Kids was one of my favorites. I loved Wild and Crazy Kids.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to be on that show, and I never got the chance to do that.
Fun fact about that show: one of the hosts, Omar Gooding, his brother is Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he would go on. He would go on to be in a couple of sitcoms like Smart Guy and Hanging with Mr. Cooper after leaving after the Wild and Crazy Kids ended.
Yep.
You just unlocked a core memory with the theme song to Smart Guy.
Yeah,
Just rang out in my head.
That show I've never actually seen.
it's
I've never actually seen that.
it's pretty good.
So.
But any other shows that you watched when you first started watching Nickelodeon, Ben?
Those were like the stuff that when I first started watching. I remember checking out some of like the stuff that became like the Nicktoons. I remember because the Looney Tunes actually was the one I remember seeing. I remember seeing the old style Looney Tunes. That was when I was first. When I was a young kid, I loved like watching cartoons, and we still had like the old VHS tapes. We had like Mighty Mouse and stuff like that. And then I remember seeing like Bugs Bunny, and Nick was like the one channel that I used to see most of like the Bugs Bunny stuff. But yeah, then I saw but then as I was growing up, I like saw the stuff that became like Doug, Rugrats, what other shows were on there? Hey Arnold came on later on. Real Monsters, I remember that one coming out. I remember seeing a few stuff with Cat Dog, but I never really got that much into that. But that's neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
All right.
most of the stuff I watched was pre-SpongeBob, and that was pretty much about it.
Okay, sounds good.
Same. Yep.
All right. What about you, Epic Man?
Well, for me, the shows I don't know like the early times I watched only just because it's just I think it's around the 2000s is where I really got into mostly cartoons and stuff. So aside from Cartoon Network being my most favorite network to watch, but Nickelodeon wise, I would say it was SpongeBob at first, and then we get to see other shows like with Rocko's Modern Life, um, Fairly Odd Parents, Kablam,
Mm-hmm.
what else? Wild Thornberries, Rocket Power, Cat Dog, Invader Zim, Chalk Zone. Like a bunch of these old shows, I would say like that gravitate me to watch more of the stuff in the network because they were so unique and goofy
Yeah.
looking with the style of the animations, especially with like Rugrats, I would say, because I love the way how it looked like in the early seasons
Yeah.
because they were definitely a bit wonky looking for how the style it was back in the day before they improved it in the later seasons.
Yeah.
And I would say because that show Rugrats was popular before SpongeBob became a thing, and so my one of my aunts knew that I was loving Rugrats so much that they decided to use a VHS tape to record a bunch of Rugrats episodes back to back for me to enjoy, which was really awesome of
Ooh,
them to do.
awesome.
So it was really cool, and I get to watch a lot of Rugrats on the VHS tapes. So because they knew I love Rugrats at the time,
Yeah.
so they did it for me, which was really cool of them.
All
But
right.
yeah, like it was really nice to see and seeing other shows come and go with later ones like Jimmy Neutron being the movie first, and I think I saw it in theaters, but even then afterwards I saw the show and I loved the show. And then Nicktoons Network became a thing, becoming another network where people can watch older other shows
Yep.
that never would come up as much, or they just want to throw it in there because they just want to put it in there for people to watch. And I became a fan of those and watching the commercials and seeing the original shows, or even shows that were in there but never was Nickelodeon, like Corny and Bernie was there.
The Cornell and Bernie.
They
Yeah.
they even they even got like some other shows that were interesting, like the Adventures of Iron Man
Yes.
or Redelivery, or just like a bunch of really a bunch of shows that you would not normally see in Nickelodeon, but they were there, and it was so fascinating to watch. So yeah, and even also in live action shows too, like with Jake and Josh and iCarly, Keen and Kel. Keen and Kel was my all-time favorite at the time, so
Yes.
those were my favorites. So, and yeah, a bunch of those shows. Like there's just a lot of variety that I thought that Nickelodeon had that I thought they were doing really good. Maybe something a bit better than Cartoon Network when they were just only about cartoons. But Nickelodeon, they were trying to do more than just being a cartoon show because they wanted to showcase other things with like live actions and events,
Mm-hmm.
like with the Kids Choice Awards, because they want to make it an eventful time for people to remember, to commemorate the awesome shows like SpongeBob and just everything about it with the hosts and just making everything memorable. And I always love seeing how they would top it off with seeing hosts to make the show lively for the kids to be amazing, just laughing out loud with everyone because it is just an amazing thing to watch. So yeah, it's pretty much how I remember Nickelodeon a lot in my younger days because there's just so much to watch, so much to remember, and
Yep.
just be amazed about everything they've done.
Yep. All right. Well, so my experience goes like this. So I do remember what was the year. I don't know when in the year, but the year that I first started watching Nickelodeon, and that was back in 1989. I was 2 going on 3. That much I do remember. And when my parents first got cable around this time, and then like I was starting to, this is when I was really starting to watch TV, like or at least consciously aware of everything and like my surroundings and everything, and also TV, just the concept of it. and they knew that as a little kid I would watch cartoons. So I would watch Nickelodeon. That was one of the first channels I would actually watch. Even though like we had like the local channels, like we would have like the local CBS, NBC, ABC, and whatever else have you, like, because at the time the WB was not a thing yet, and Fox was still pretty new around that time, and UPN did not exist either. But Nickelodeon, I remember like watching it, and I don't remember what was the first show I've watched, but I remember that it was on Nick Jr. It might have been Pinwheel. It might have been Pinwheel. I don't remember, but what I do remember was that later on, when I would watch more Nickelodeon as I was starting to get a little bit older, like I remember Nickelodeon, like Nick Jr. was different back then. They had shows that were anime for preschoolers. There were two koala shows. There was one in particular called The Adventures of the Little Koala, and then there was another one called Noozles. And Noozles had multiple koalas. One of which was, and then there was like a character there that had the same voice actress as Angelica Pickles, because she actually did some anime voices back in the day, because like I believe it was a Saban dub, because Saban dubs were relatively cheap anime dubs back then in the late 80s, early 90s. There was also Grimm's Fairy Tale Classics. I remember watching it on there. There was a show called The Little Bits, David the Gnome, which had a very sad ending. I remember, but the biggest show that I've enjoyed watching on Nick Jr. most of all back in the day was Eureka's Castle, where they had like all these puppets. Yes.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one to remember that. Oh, validation that it wasn't a fever dream. Hell yeah.
And here's a fun fact. There's a character, like a giant dragon named Magellan. The person who portrayed Magellan would go on to become the Bear in the Big Blue House on the Disney Channel. Same guy. But
I'm just realizing right now while looking that the show was developed and written by R.L. Stein.
Yes.
I had no idea.
He actually did have some involvement in it.
Yeah.
One of my...
It's crazy.
Wow.
I think there was a bat named Quagmire with the glasses, and he's a klutz. He always bumps into things and hits himself, and then like his catchphrase was, "I've meant to do that." The show itself was a lot of fun to watch. Like they would have like different segments.
Batley, by the way.
Yeah,
there was a character named Quagmire, but Batley was the bat character. Boggy and Quagmire were the Moat twins.
Oh right, yeah, like Batley. What I do remember, the thing is that I felt like that type of show, they were trying to have something that was kind of like if you're watching something on PBS, but on Nickelodeon instead. It gave me the exact same vibe as like whenever I would watch Sesame Street or anything that was on PBS at the time. So that show was fun. I used to love it. And I remember like once it hit 2:00 in the afternoon, usually, that's when they shift from Nick Jr. back to Nickelodeon, and then we would see like the shows you would normally see. Did you know that Yogi Bear actually was on Nickelodeon at one point?
Really?
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah,
Like-
I vaguely remember that was a thing.
Before Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon managed to get the license to air Yogi Bear from Hanna-Barbera because around that time, like, because Yogi Bear appeared in Nickelodeon Studios, because Universal Studios, Nickelodeon was on there. And the thing about that is, Nickelodeon had so many different avenues on where they were promoting themselves. So what happened is that Nickelodeon would just have Nickelodeon Studios. They would have different shows. They had a lot of interesting outsourced shows back in the day. So naturally speaking, like I remember they had Underdog, they had Rocky and Bullwinkle on Nickelodeon back in the day, which some people probably will be like, wait, those shows aired on Nickelodeon? And the answer is yes, they did. Because like just like how they got Looney Tunes, they would pretty much just get anything. They got Danger Mouse, a show that was imported from the UK, but another show that they had, which Nickelodeon actually had a hand in helping create before Nicktoons was even a thing, Count Duckula, which also came from the UK.
Count Duckula and Danger Mouse. I remember those were shows I remember watching as a kid too. I just core memory unlocked there. You said.
Yeah, so you see, like Nickelodeon, like they were just trying to get stuff that you would not have seen anywhere else at the time. And the thing is that back in the day, like they had there was a couple of bumpers that they would have. They had those sports cartoons where like I think it was like those cats that would play sports. One of them would always try to cheat and he failed every single time.
Sorry, I just read Rick's comment in the Twitch chat.
Oh,
yep. And there was also like this one short that was very sad. And there was this guy who he was about to eat an egg, and then he just took a spoon and he just kept tapping it. It was like, and then you could hear, "Hey, who is this? Now stop that!" He destroyed the whole egg. He was just being mischievous. He messed up the egg, and then all of a sudden he got a knock at the door, wondering who that was. He opened it, nobody was there, and then his house just crumbled down. Basically, that was supposed to be the consequence of his actions for destroying that egg. And there was also Banana Man, which they would air in between shows. They would air like, and Adventures of Pete and Pete actually aired in between shows before it became a full show. And that was like back in like the early 90s. Like Nickelodeon, like what I grew up with before, like like the pre-Nicktoons era was different. Because there were some other game shows that they aired. Like there was this one called Finders Keepers, where you had to go into like a house and you had to like just toss everything through, like pretty much dirty any rooms until you find whatever you're supposed to look for. There was a show called there was Make the Grade. There was Think Fast. Like there was so many weird game shows, and they even had like they were trying to have like their own like music video show the same way that MTV would air music videos. Because Nickelodeon, what they always wanted to do was take whatever existed, like a certain medium that existed in a different channel or different space, and make a kids version of it. But they were trying to. They don't want kids. They don't want to turn everything into like, oh, this is just for kids for the sake of being kids, but they want kids to feel like, oh, we have our own thing too, just like how adults have their thing. That's what they wanted to do, because at the end of the day, Nickelodeon was they wanted people to think that Nickelodeon was made by kids for kids. It may not have been made by kids, but it was all for every single kid out there. So they did a great,
kind of like the equivalent for that, yeah.
They did a great job at the time with that, especially the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards and all that stuff. And I remember, like, in the early days of Kids' Choice Awards, like, celebrities will only show up if they know for a fact that they were going to win. Like, the voice actor for Roger Rabbit would only show up if he knew he was winning. Like, he would not have showed up if he was going to lose. But yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, so the next one I'm going to ask, for Ben, I'm going to ask you this first. What were some of your favorite Nickelodeon shows, whether if they were live action, game shows, or Nicktoons?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, some of my favorite stuff of all time in terms of like Nickelodeon content, this was Legends of the Hidden Temple was one. Nickelodeon Guts was another. There was Wild and Crazy Kids.
Mm-hmm.
There was Nick Arcade. There was Rugrats was my favorite Nicktoon. up until Dill was introduced, and then that just, in my opinion, just went completely downhill.
Mm-hmm.
Kenan and Kel was one of my favorite live action stuff. Yeah, I loved, but as far as like original like Nicktoons was going,
Mm-hmm.
nothing topped Rocko's Modern Life. Kablam was pretty good too, but like Rocko's Modern Life was the shit. That was my jam.
Yep.
So
All
I
right.
was looking at some of the older stuff too, and I remember I remember that, you know, oh hey, there was some older stuff on here that I remember that I completely forgot. Sharon Lois and Bram's Elephant Show was one that kind of came up. I was like, oh, I
That's
remember
right.
this from my kid.
I I used to watch that too. I used to watch Sharon Lewis and Bram's Elvis show. That was my childhood as well.
I just remember like Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, Skinnamarink-a-doo.
Oh, that was them. Oh my
That
god.
was them. That was
Whoa.
them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's say, yeah, Muppet Babies was one of the ones that I remember seeing as a kid.
I love Muppet Babies.
I loved Muppet Babies. That was like one of my favorite shows as a kid when I was like watching Nickelodeon. Uh, there was another one I saw in here that. Oh, right. I saw this one. This didn't come on till later. This was like 1994. But this was another one of my favorites. This was actually the one show that made Nick Jr. bearable for me in like the mid 90s. Gullah Gullah Island.
Oh, I love Gullah Gullah Island.
I remember that.
Yep.
But that's pretty much that's pretty much all of my favorites.
Yep. All right. Your turn, Epic Man.
All right, so for me, I probably will gonna have to say for a different categories for like different favorites. Like favorite live actions for me would have to be Keenan and Kel. It like my favorite of all because I just love the duo with Keenan and Kel. Just them together makes a funny duo. Same thing with Drake and Josh, but I would say it is my next favorite because like both of these shows, when you have a duo of these funny characters doing the most funniest stuff and they having their misadventures where they getting themselves in trouble, and I just love to see how they try to get out of it or they just keep going and going and going downhill to get themselves into even more trouble, and just makes me laugh all the way every time I watch them, and it's just so hilarious.
Yep.
It's just so funny. And then now with I would say my favorite game shows they used to have probably for me would be the Legend of the Hidden Temple or Nickelodeon Guts. I pretty sure I would say maybe Guts is a little bit better for me because I just love seeing all the different activities and seeing them climbing up the mountain at the very end just to see if they can get it, and it makes me wish that I was in that type of show where I wanted to see if I could conquer myself, and just because it looks so fun. It's like it makes me think I'm like in some sort of gym in a school gym or some sort because it feels like I'm in a big, huge gym where there's just so much stuff that you can do and just so much fun you can try out for people to like exercise and whatnot, and also be on TV. It makes me happy and excited to see to root for whoever I think is gonna win. Because I always imagine who would win and just see how they go from there. So it's always amazing to see that. And then there is for cartoons, it's kind of a difficult for me thing to say because there's just so many of them that you just can't help but to pick a lot of favorites. Like any other things you would say, what is your favorite? So I guess I would say just because SpongeBob is being up there because everyone loves SpongeBob, but I would also say Fairly Odd Parents, Rocko's Modern Life, or even I guess I would say Rugrats is also a great show because I used to love the heck out of that so much before SpongeBob became a thing, and then I also would say Ren and Stimpy, Hey Arnold, Cat Dog, even Chalk Zone, Jimmy Neutron, Life as a Teenage Robot, just all of these shows. I could just list them off and just say they're all my favorites because I mean I can't help to pick one because really all of these shows are unique and amazing and just lovely to see because they have all different animation styles and just all of them have great chemistry and all that stuff. So I would say those are my favorites right now.
Okay, that's good. What about you, Rick?
God, it's so hard to choose. So my range for Nickelodeon when I was like really in there was pretty much firmly the 90s, literally right up until I think I stopped watching very shortly after SpongeBob got started. I did watch some Rocket Power, a decent amount of that, and then I think shortly after that I started like fizzling out on it. But like out of the cartoons, I liked Doug a lot. Rugrats was always so hit or miss. I think because the art style, it's probably something I would enjoy a lot more now, honestly. The art style, like something in my brain always registered it as like kind of gross.
Right.
In a weird, like, and obviously everybody's got weird deformed heads and bodies and shit in that show. So like, that's not necessarily like that out there response, but like, even just like, all right, here's our main character, Tommy Pickles, and his head looks like a lumpy bowl of mashed potatoes. And it's just like, okay. And it just goes from there. But,
Yep.
I liked what little of Ren and Stimpy I was allowed to watch as a kid. And I was only allowed to watch any if my dad was already watching it when I came in the room, essentially.
Really?
Any other instance, my mom was like, turn that shit off right now. I mean, the show came out when I was 4, and they definitely like, you know, the sign of a good like family film, family movie or something along those lines is one where there's jokes that the kids like, and there's jokes that like the kids don't necessarily are not necessarily unable to get, but they're definitely aimed at the adults in one way or another. Ren and Stimpy definitely kind of like pushed it pretty hard on that to the point where some things were like, hey, this feels like we're veering from haha bodies are silly to, oh, this is actually a little sexual, like uncomfortably at some moments. You know, the nipples of the future and stuff like that were always a little like, okay. I loved Rocco. Yeah. I loved Rocco. Rocco is probably one. I loved it back then. I think if I went back and watched it now, it would be even better because that one did the exact opposite thing in some ways than Ren and Stimpy. They also did their like weird kind of gross stuff, but they were definitely making commentary on a lot of stuff that would have sailed completely over my head as a kid.
Yep.
The show came out when I was 6. There was no chance I was going to get some of that stuff, but like, especially just seeing what the like revival movie kind of was focused on for its point, going back and watching old episodes of Rocco's Modern Life would absolutely just be like, oh, this is a whole other thing going on.
Yeah.
I agree with that because it's like you said, one of the best marks of a great show is one that you could watch as a kid and laugh at the haha funny jokes, and then watch it again 10 or 15 years later as an adult and then laugh at it again because of some of the stuff you didn't get as a kid now hits differently and it's still fucking funny.
Right. Some of it's the shock factor too of like, how did they pull this off in some kid's show? Like just whether it's a thing that's like, whoa, or like, oh, some high concept thing. And it's just like, oh, okay, that's in there too. Why not?
Yeah.
I will admit,
I would say that for SpongeBob as well.
I will admit, though, that Ren and Stimpy was one of those shows that I did love as a kid, but I tried watching it again as an adult, and I can't fucking stand it now.
It's the embodiment of what people. It's such like, it feels like such like a boomer mindset kind of way to think of it, but like, you know, there's the complaint that older generations will make about younger generations like entertainment being like, it's all just noise and colors and whatever. And it's like, that was kind of what Ren and Stimpy was a lot of time. Like, here's Ren just shrieking or Stimpy shrieking. And you've got the like starburst color blast backgrounds and like veins popping and like, it was so intense all of the time. And well, like I think it would give me a panic attack watching half of it now.
Well, like not only that, but like some of the stuff that they had was just disgusting. that I didn't think of it as the time. Like there was
Yeah.
that one episode where they had a character that was basically just a living fart, and I'm
Yes.
like, how do they get the fuck
I
away with
think
this?
I think I know what you're talking about, but I think I need to remember more.
It was a
about it. They
Christmas
have, like,
episode.
a bunch of, like, with characters.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
Perfect.
It was
I
called.
think I know.
It was called Son of Stimpy. It was in the second season. It was originally supposed to be called Stimpy's First Fart, but the Nick execs were like,
Right.
"No, we're not gonna call it that." So we're gonna.
Yeah,
so they
I
call
remember
it.
that, yeah,
So they
yeah.
call it Son of Stimpy, because at the time with Ren and Stimpy, they kind of had like this big trade where like, in order to get some gross out episodes, they had to have some heartwarming episodes, like. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
balance it out.
that was the
Yeah.
that was the compromise back then, which definitely pissed off John K. And I'm going to talk a lot about John K. later on. Believe me, I'm going to be talking about him later on.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have some thoughts about John K and his
Yeah.
his upcomings with what happened back then.
Yeah, but
I
anyway,
will admit that there are a couple of things on the Ren and Stimpy I did actually enjoy that even I do still kind of enjoy to this day. There are a few fleeting moments. The history eraser button is one I will still reference every so often.
that one was good.
The Jolly Candy like button.
Yeah,
The as disturbing as it is, Happy Happy Joy Joy also kind of is.
It's such an earworm. It really is.
It's such an earworm.
yeah.
Joy,
Log too.
joy.
It rolls
I don't know.
downstairs alone or in bears and over the neighbor's dog. If it's on your back, it's great for a
Yep.
snack. It's log,
Log,
log.
log.
I love that one still.
The songs
They
were
tried to
routinely
do.
pretty. Yeah. Don't Whiz on the Electric Fence
Yeah.
is still in my like go-to bag
Oh
of
my God,
references.
That one, yep. I was just about to reference that one too. Don't whiz on the electric fence. Yep.
Oh my god, that one was so funny.
Oh
Those
man.
are pretty much like the only thing. And I think, yeah, I do remember bits and pieces of the episode of Fire Dogs, but
Yeah,
that's
the
all.
fire dogs when you become the fire dogs. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
That's
Becomes
pretty
the
much like
fire dogs.
that's pretty much like the only ones I remember off the top of my head with any real clarity.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Some of those specific episodes wound up being turned into some of the harder levels of some Ren and Stimpy video games too.
They did, yes.
Oh yeah, they did.
Yeah, like there was,
Mhm,
The boxing one I think is in every adaptation that they did for video games.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, very video gameable episode.
It
Like,
was. It was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just pretty much the entire lineup from 1990 and 1999. Hey Arnold was a big fan of that. Kablam was awesome just by virtue of being like a cartoon variety show. That was really neat, having a whole bunch of stuff in there.
it's amazing to watch. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Angry Beavers and Cat Dog
Yeah.
was down for both
I
of those at the
remember
time.
Angry Beavers. Angry Beavers was such a good show.
Yeah,
It's
Daggett
so
Norbert.
freaking good.
Yes.
It was someone just basically went like, all right, what if we set the Odd Couple, or not the Odd Couple, no, I guess the Odd Couple
The run-
as you know, a pair of beavers in the deep north, and that's just the whole show.
Yeah.
Yep.
They crushed it.
They did.
The live action stuff, I had the worst crush on Melissa Joan Hart growing up, thanks to Clarissa Explains It All.
Same.
And I even found it in my heart to look past her appearance on Nick Arcade. I feel so bad, actually, looking back on that. I feel like people like raked her over the coals for that forever. But it's like, if you've never played a Sonic game, you probably... So if anyone is not aware, so Melissa Joan Hart, star of Clarissa Explains It All in the early 90s, was on Nick Arcade. If you're not familiar with Nick Arcade, it was a video game-based game show. And they usually had a couple of arcade games, which sometimes were console games that were just made up to look like arcade games. And they had a pre-release. It's literally, if you go to the cutting room floor, they have a whole page about this. The last time I checked, they had a pre-release Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I don't know how they managed that. That was nuts. But and she wound up going up, and it was like collect 10 rings or something, or maybe it was get like 1,000 points, which is nothing if you've played a Sonic game before, but there'd only been one Sonic game before and she hadn't played it. So, it wound up being like struggling on like a loop to loop kind of thing and stuff. And it's like, yeah, you only get like 30 seconds to figure out the controls of these games.
Yeah.
Classic video clip. It's everywhere online, but
Yep.
mirroring everybody else's thoughts on Kenan and Kel, that might have been my favorite thing to watch for like a long stretch of time. And it's almost certainly where I got my love of orange soda from. 100%.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah, I love orange soda.
Yep.
Are you afraid of the dark? And obviously the game shows. I got to go in, I think 2000 to like, we went to Florida, we went to like Disney and Universal and stuff like that, and we got to see the Nickelodeon studios like lot that they record a bunch of their stuff on, and you can do like tours, and we did like a tour of it, and it was great. And they did little things every day where it's like, okay, we're not doing like a real show, but we'll put people into these bleachers and we'll do kind of like a mini version of some of these shows. And it was a lot of fun to do that. But like, it's the game shows they had going in the early 90s were like absurd how good they were. Like, yeah, Wild and Crazy Kids wasn't a studio one. They just found some bog outside and just did everything there. But What Would You Do was amazing. I wanted to ride that little roller coaster at the end so badly. Nick Arcade, like I was saying, was great. The green screen thing at the end seemed like so much fun. Legends of the Hidden Temple. Everybody I knew wanted to be on that show so badly.
Yeah, same.
And like, I think everybody has had that moment of just being like, just turn the head, put that's upside down. The silver monkey, just put the stick in. There's a square on the bottom of the bottom piece. Come on.
There was one episode I remember Kurt Fogg yelling at the kid, just like, turn the torso around, turn the torso around, like for like a solid minute.
Imagine you being a kid when you're going to that show and you being yelled at by adults, or even kids, just saying,
you're standing 15 feet off the ground because you're on the second floor of this 3-walled structure. There's temple guards staring at you from outside the room, and you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Also, those temple guards are scary as hell.
I remember like the episodes like where like what was it? The first person goes into the temple, like on the bottom part, where like the what was it called, the caves or something like that.
Yep.
There's at least 2 instances where the kid goes into the caves and there's the temple guard right fucking there.
Like, come on, guys. Poor kid. They were waiting all day for that. They've probably been waiting for weeks because they had to like go through like a whole audition and screening thing and everything. And they're like, I get to do the thing. They go in 3 seconds in, they get caught.
Yeah.
And I think, and of course, Nickelodeon Guts, which in my opinion might be the thing that has like the worst licensed video game I've ever played in my life. Sorry, you know what? Number two. The Price is Right for the Wii is worse, but Nickelodeon Guts on the Super Nintendo is abhorrently bad. It's crazy how bad that game is.
Yep.
Rotoscope platforming.
I saw that.
Yep.
If you're gonna do rotoscope platforming, you better know what you're doing. That's all I'm gonna say.
Rated Dog even points out it was like one episode of Legends of the Hidden Temple. This kid got scared so badly they got qualified because he actually jumped out of the temple back onto the main stage.
Oh my god!
On the one hand, I understand because the episode we saw where he not only disqualified, it didn't matter because even though he got disqualified from leaving the course, he was the second kid. Because the first one had already gotten caught, so he would have been disqualified anyway. And even if that temple guard wasn't there, he only had like 20 seconds left on the clock anyhow. So it didn't matter one way or the other. He was losing one. He was basically done for.
Yep.
Honestly, with very little time left, they may as well have just been like, "Oh, you got 3 more seconds. Oh, time's up." Like, just don't even bother saying it. Just be like, "Oh yeah, you got time. Oh, you didn't even make it back to the entrance."
One of the episodes we saw that was not too far. There was one kid. The team that made it in. The first person wound up taking so much time that even though she got caught by the Temple Guard and was taken out, the second person was running in. There was like literally 5 seconds left on the clock. He was just heading up the stairs, and Kirk Fogg was like, "Wait, no, time's up. Come back."
Oh
Oh
God.
my god.
Come back.
Yeah. Oh, that was such a fun episode.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, but anything else, Rick?
I like. There's just so many. I think I hit all the big ones, to be honest. But one final shout out, because we haven't really talked about them yet, is the actual proper like live action variety programs they had on there. I feel like everybody knows all that.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, not the least of which is Kenan Thompson has been doing sketch comedy now for like 30 whatever years, which is incredible.
Yep.
I think he's also the longest tenured person on SNL now by like a decent chunk too. Like he's really like just gone, this is what I want to do, and done it the whole time, which props.
Yeah, like 21 years. Yeah.
He's been doing it for a long time, which is impressive. I mean, I watched him from All That to Keenan Kel, and now he's in Saturday Night Live, and I'm just like, man, imagine me watching that as an adult right now for a long time, and this feels like he's been growing up for becoming a really funny comedian, just to being on that show. It's really cool.
Well,
there's been murmurs too about I mean, Lorne Michaels is not going to be around forever, and he's getting up there, and he's been executive producing the show for almost the entire 51 year run, and there's people who are kind of going like, so is he passing the torch over to Kenan as the new like man in charge over there, or
That'd be crazy if that's the case.
That would be
yeah.
That would be huge if that was the case. Yeah. But speaking of passing of the torch and Kenan, there was actually a moment in All That where there was such an event that happened. So former Saturday Night Live comedian Chris Farley appeared on an episode of All That, and this episode aired like a few weeks before he died. So Chris Farley came in as Chef Farley because at the time, like, remember when there was Cooking with Randy and Mandy, and
I believe so. Yeah.
And then by the third season, like, the actress who portrayed Mandy left the show, so it would be Cooking with Randy, and at first it was just him solo, but then he would try to find other people to be his co-hosts, and in the fourth season, he was still trying to find people to be his next co-host, where all they would do is make everything into chocolate. But in this episode, we had Chris Farley come in as a guest, where he was Chef Farley. But instead of chocolate, he would cook everything with ketchup. And then at some point in the sketch, he broke down. I'm not sure if he was actually in character, because at the time he was completely on drugs around this time, which ended up what killing him.
Yeah.
It's what killed him in the end. Which the thing is that he was actually in line to be the voice of Shrek, but then he died. So that's why that movie got delayed for years. But it was a passing of the torch moment, because like you had Kenan Thompson and you had Chris Farley. Chris Farley at the time, who was a former Saturday Night Live cast member, and then Kenan Thompson, who would later go on to be on SNL. So like, I don't think they really saw it as a passing of the torch moment at the time, but people see it as that now, because when you look back, because not long afterwards, after that aired, he died. Like Chris Farley died. So it was like an amazing moment just to have the two of them like do their usual comedic routines together. It worked out very well at the time, because I remember watching that because I didn't really watch SNL yet until later, so I didn't know much about Chris Farley. The only thing I knew was there was a movie that was released shortly, like, before this. It was called I believe it was Beverly Hills Ninja or something. He was like a ninja. Yeah. So it's a shame that he passed when he did, because he was one of my favorite comedians. Like, because like I later followed his work, and I'm like, yeah, I love this stuff. But yeah, that was a passing of the torch moment.
Indeed.
All right. But yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to say, Rick? Before
I'll do it super fast. Which is shout out to anybody who remembers Wienerville or Roundhouse.
yes to both.
Yeah.
If you wasn't going to mention Winterville, I was.
Yeah.
That sounds funny.
I watched both of those shows.
Boney's little spiel is also in my usual bag of tricks for silly references.
Yep. So now here's mine. All right. So first and foremost, well, Let's the Hidden Temple is definitely one of my all-time favorite game shows. But there's one game show that has not been mentioned yet. Figure It Out with Summer Sanders.
Yeah. Figure it out.
And
Yeah.
she would
That was really good.
she
I've
would
seen that, to be perfectly honest. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
and the panelists would be like those who were cast members of different shows at the time, or like whether it was the game shows, like they had Michael Malley on there. They had Mark Weiner from Wienerville. They had a couple of All That cast members. At the time, Danny Tamborelli was part of Pete and Pete. He wasn't in All That yet. He would be like later that year. They would have like people within like who were cast members of different shows. They've had professional wrestlers from WCW at the time. They've had Cat Dog in CG as a contestant, or no, or panelist.
Oh yeah.
That
I
one.
remember that one.
And they also had cousin Skeeter as one, and he got slimed.
Oh yeah. Cousin Skeeter.
There was a rumor that the cousin Skeeter puppet getting slimed was what led to the show getting canceled. Not true. Not true. It ended up not being true. Yeah.
Who said that?
There was some reports. It was false reports, but at the time,
any puppet based show that's going on, they're gonna have a spare puppet in case of like some random shit that goes down on set.
yeah. I think I got canceled because of low ratings. But Figure It Out had like maybe like 3 or 4 seasons. What I remember also was that in terms of other game shows that Nickelodeon had, like I grew up with Guts, I grew up with Wild and Crazy Kids, I grew up with both like with multiple versions of Double Dare, What Will You Do? Nick Arcade, I've watched that as well. But here's one that people do not remember, and this one had Michael Malley in it as well before Guts. Get the Picture, which that show was like so they used to rerun that show on Nickelodeon Gas Games and Sports, and like it starts out with trivia questions, but then like once you get it right, you have to connect the dots, and if you connect enough dots, you would see pictures. And then if you see like multiple pictures at once, you have to try to guess what it is to get points. In the first season, you lose points, but then they took that off in the second season. The format was not great in the first season, but the second season they made it better. They would have these power surges where it was like a bonus round to get more points, and then like I forgot what they call like the last game, like the winning team gets to participate in the game where like you could win prizes and all that stuff. Usually like Nickelodeon game shows, the most common prize that they would give you if you win the whole thing is a trip to Universal Studios Florida. Usually that would be the prize.
Yeah, it was.
But it wasn't always that.
Which was always kind of funny because at least half of those shows were filmed basically right there in the first place.
Exactly.
So I don't know if it's like, hey, we'll pay for another trip, we'll pay for this trip, well, whatever. But it is just kind of funny to think about in hindsight. It's like that'd be like going to New York City and they're like, you get an all expense paid trip to New York City. It's like,
yep.
Okay.
But
all right, well, we're here.
But
yeah.
Yep. But what I remember,
you gonna pay for our food too?
but in like a Family Double Dare, usually like the grand prize, if it's not a trip, it's a brand new car.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Which
typical game show.
Kids love a new car.
Can't say no to a new car. Like the mom or dad would drive the new car, and and they'll be able to just go wherever. But what I also remember was they would have so many different specials. Like I remember like they would for a while they did a lot of Muppet specials. Even before Jim Henson passed away, like they would air tons and tons of Muppet specials that either you couldn't really see anywhere else, or like they would rarely be seen on television, but Nickelodeon was the place where you could see them. So in addition to Muppet Babies, they would also air reruns of The Muppet Show, which I used to watch. They've had, I remember watching, so what I remember watching, there was a Dr. Seuss show with puppets. It aired in the same year that Hey Arnold first started, 96. It used to air on Sunday. It used to air on Sunday nights. But it only lasted a season. Yeah.
Oh, I guess that
explains why I don't remember that.
Remember?
Yeah, because it would air. I believe it would air. It would air on Sunday nights before Nick News. And speaking of Nick News, yeah, I watch Nick News every now and then. I have a huge amount of respect for Linda Ellaby for all the stuff that she's done. Great stuff right there as well. But what I also remember
I watched Nick News back then.
What I also watched growing up, I remember watching this one show that aired at 6 a.m. called like remember. Does anyone remember Mr. Wizard?
I've heard of it, but I've never actually seen that one.
No, I don't.
Yeah, it was more like a show. It's basically science at the time. Like he made a lot of science experiments each episode, and I remember that being a very popular show. Like Mr. Wizard
kind of paved. It sort of paved the way in a lot of ways for like the at the time the more modern stuff like Beekman's World and Bill Nye and stuff. It was like here's science, like ways to explore science and ways to experiment that you could actually do at home sometimes. Mr. Wizard might have done a few that weren't quite so at home doable, but like it was
I've
a
seen
huge
Mr.
show.
Wizard. I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I just looked it up and I was like, and now that I saw the world, like, oh wait, yes, I did. It's been like freaking forever, but yes, I did at least see it at least once.
It was basically like a way to make science cool, and it was like it aired from 1983 to 1990, but it would air in reruns going into the 2000s. But I used to watch Mr. Wizard's World a lot when I was a kid. Whenever I would wake up, it was like 5 or 6 in the morning, to get ready for school. Like that would be a show that would be on. I would also see reruns of different shows. Like usually like 6 or 6:30 would be like a death slot for certain shows that they just want to get like just burn it before like they just take it off the air. What I remember as well growing up was there were a couple of other shows that not many people seem to remember airing on Nickelodeon back in the day. There was the 90s version of Tomorrow People. I did not like that show. I personally found it boring. But
I don't recall it.
Yeah, it was like the mid 90s. I believe it was from the UK. Nickelodeon did have a decent amount of shows from the UK, from Canada, from France. Like they would try to have different shows from all over the world that you could not get anywhere else but at Nickelodeon at the time. Hence what I mentioned earlier about those sports cartoons or Banana Man and all that stuff. Growing up, because Nickelodeon, they just wanted to experiment with different things just to see what kids would like, and for kids to see the shows from like different parts of the world. So, and that was right around the time when they were starting to get big hits. I remember, I do remember Roundhouse. I do remember Wienerville growing up.
I love the little hands on Wienerville, the little stick hands to do everything on conveyor belts.
Yep,
they did that shit every single episode.
I've also watched Hey Dude, but there is another show, a live action sitcom that I've watched that had no laugh track, but I thought didn't need it because I thought it was a really good show. I used to watch a lot of Salute You shorts.
Yep, I remember those as well. Yep.
Okay.
There was actually supposed to be a third season, but they were gonna have a different cast, and then they decided they scrapped that because the reason they were gonna have a different cast is because they did not want to move the cast over to Florida.
I see.
They were shooting them I believe they were shooting in California at the time, like the first 2 seasons, and some of them some of the cast members also wanted to move on from the show. Another show that I remember as well that I remember watching, there was, what else was there? What else was on around this time? All right, so I've watched Pete and Pete. I watched a lot of Pete and Pete, which I believe the third season had Michelle Trachtenberg. May she rest in peace, by the way.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, because she was also in a Nickelodeon movie called Harriet the Spy, which I never got a chance to watch that movie, but I've heard it was really good.
That was the
I
first
remember
Nickelodeon
seeing
movie,
that.
apparently.
What happened, Ben?
I remember seeing that. I did see that once, but only once. But back as a kid,
Yeah,
I do remember that it wasn't that bad.
yeah. And what you were gonna say, Rick?
I was just saying that was kind of what helped sort of, not that she wasn't already doing some TV stuff already, but it seemed like that really helped kickstart her career properly was Harriet the Spy. Like that got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, because that was before she ended up being a part of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And let's see. So game shows, yes, like I've talked a lot about the game shows already, but then there were some other animated shows besides the Nicktoons. Because like for Nicktoons, I could tell you my favorites right off the bat. Rocko's Modern Life is my all-time favorite show for not just Nicktoons, but pretty much all Nickelodeon. But I also watched a lot of Ren and Stimpy, Doug, Hey Arnold, Real Monsters, Angry Beavers, Invader Zim, Rocket Power. I've seen like the whole series. I've seen the whole series for what else? I've seen, or at least most of Cat Dog. I've seen most of Cat Dog. I think I might have missed a few episodes, but I watched most of Cat Dog. I watch let's see, what else was there? My Life as a Teenage Robot. I've seen Chalk Zone. Oh Yeah Cartoons, which Oh Yeah Cartoons was Nickelodeon's own version of when Cartoon Network was doing What a Cartoon. It was basically Nickelodeon's own version where they would have pilots of different shows. They would get different animators because a lot of them left Cartoon Network and joined Nickelodeon, and it was basically the same format. There was a show that was on both Cartoon Network's What a Cartoon and Nickelodeon's Oh Yeah Cartoons, which I'm surprised did not get picked up as a show. It was called Mina and the Count. This appeared on Cartoon Network's What a Cartoon first.
I love that one.
And then it aired,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, and then it aired on Nickelodeon via Oh Yeah Cartoons multiple times.
Yeah. Oh my god, that takes me back.
And the Count was actually voiced by Mark Hamill.
Oh, nice.
Yes. I think they originally considered picking that one up as a show, but they decided against it and they went with Fairly Odd Parents instead. Although Fairly Odd Parents wasn't actually supposed to be the first show they picked up from Oh Yeah Cartoons. It was actually supposed to be Chalk Zone. For whatever reason, they delayed that by a few years. Chalk Zone was actually supposed to first air like the show in 1999 instead of 2002.
Yeah, I think I recall that because I remember watching the original pilot back when I was around, and then I remember seeing it again when they did make it as a show. And I mean, I did not recall to think why it took so long. I was really surprised to see that it came out at all with new designs of the characters, with Rudy,
Yeah.
and everyone looking different, and just I like what they did with it, and just I was really enjoying it when it was out.
And then because with the pilot, like with the first, like in the first episode of Chalk Zone, they actually made the pilot longer because Chalk Zone was going to be a 2-episode format because they and the thing is and to answer Ice Free's question in the chat, yes, they did age Rudy up by 2 years. Or at least
Yes.
it was supposed to be 2 years. Because like in the first
He looks
episode,
more older.
yeah, because in the first episode, like they added a new scene in before the pilot actually started. And then like once they got to the start of the pilot, it said 2 years earlier, which was the original episode. Fairly Odd Parents appeared on Oh Yeah Cartoons, and Timmy had a different voice. The voice actress for Timmy Turner was originally supposed to be Mary Kay Bergman, but then she died in 1999. Because Mary Kay Bergman was at the time the voice of Snow White at the time, as well as being a prominent feature in South Park. She voiced pretty much every single woman in the show, like all the women in the show. Yeah, it was a very tragic story.
Okay.
May she rest in peace. And I believe she was
in
also Daphne in the modern Scooby Doo at the time. Yeah. So when Fairly Odd Parents aired, Tara Strong took over as the voice of Timmy Turner, and then that was that. I remember the Secret World of Alex Mack,
Yep,
where
I remember that too.
Yeah.
she had like
I think I remember that.
she had the metallic liquid powers, like all these powers that like she had to keep secret from pretty much everybody, although the only person that knew at the time was her best friend. It was a really good show. Like I didn't watch all the episodes, but when I would watch the show, it was good, very good. But it's been a while since I've seen it. I've seen Are You Afraid of the Dark? But here's another show that not many people remember. It aired for a few seasons in the late 90s. It was called The Journey of Alan Strange, where there was this kid who was an alien. And then but he looks human, but he's actually an alien. And he was living with a family. I thought the show was really cool. It aired on Snick in the late 90s. But here's a show that should have had an ending but didn't. Does anybody remember a show called 100 Good Deeds for Eddie McDowd?
Yep.
Where
Yep, I have.
Yes,
I did. There was a punk kid a punk teenager that ended up like transforming into a dog because because
Oh,
he was not
Jesus, yeah.
he was not a good kid. So like as a consequence, he turned into a dog, and then he was living with a family. And in order to turn back into a human, he must do 100 good deeds. At first, they were committed to the show, like counting like how many good deeds he's done. And then there was a time where he sacrificed a couple of his good deeds in order to save someone. I don't remember the full episode because it's been a while since I watched the show. They never finished it. I was hoping they would finish it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that show not too long ago. I wasn't sure when I was going to get a chance because I was going to bring if you weren't going to bring that up, I was. There was going to be that was probably like the one show that I kind of wanted to see an actual ending to because I remember that pretty clearly too.
Yeah, Nickelodeon just pulled the plug on that. Like they pulled the plug on so many shows very soon. And also for All That, the final season of the original cast of All That, you wonder who was on that show? Comedian Gabriel Iglesias was on the final season of the original All That had like most of the original cast.
No way, Fluffy was on there? Damn.
He was on there.
Okay.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on the last season. I believe both Keenan and Kel were not a part of that anymore. But a lot of people left the show. And around that time, Keenan and Kel was in its final season. There was also the Amanda Show. There was also what else was around that time? Because around that time, Snick changed from because like Snick changed its format so that they were doing this whole Snick House where they ended up like having like a party inside this house, and then like they had the giant couch. Nick Cannon, I believe, was one of the hosts, which Nick Cannon had his own show at later on, which I enjoyed watching. There was also Romeo with rapper Little Romeo.
Oh my god! Oh my god! That reminds me about that show. Yeah, I used to watch that a little bit.
Like and I'll mention the moment that I've actually stopped watching Nickelodeon on a regular basis. It was in the mid 2000s, like around like 2005, 2006. Like I was looking at the lineup to see what they had, and a lot of the shows just weren't really hitting. There was one show I regret not getting into because people were actually telling me it was good, and that was El Tigre. People were telling me El Tigre was really good, but around this time,
So good.
but around that time was when I was kind of like just falling out of Nickelodeon. Like I would watch some stuff here and there, but I was not really as active on watching Nickelodeon like I used to be around this time. Mainly because my interests were just shifting elsewhere, and I just did not really. I just felt like that I didn't really fit what Nickelodeon was going for. To me, I felt like the last major thing that I've watched that where I was like completely into Nickelodeon was the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. When I watched it in theaters,
Great movie.
and that should have actually been the finale, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I did watch SpongeBob. Of course I did. But I've also watched. So I've watched All Grown Up. I've watched As Told by Ginger, which is a show I needed to mention because that's actually probably one of the most heaviest and deepest shows Nickelodeon has ever produced. Granted, it's a classic super. It's a classic super show. I thought I enjoyed it, but I'm just gonna say one thing about As Told by Ginger. I grew to hate a certain character on that show. Her name is Dodie Bishop. She is such a shitty friend because she would go out of her way to sabotage Ginger just so that whenever Ginger is about to be successful in or move on with her life, like for example, transferring to a bigger and prestigious school, she would do everything in her power to convince Ginger not to go. But granted, she's the type of person in which that if she was the one who was given these opportunities, she would piece the fuck out. She would be that person who like wants to control you because she doesn't have anything else. But the moment she gets an opportunity, she will stab you in the back. She's a fake friend. Fuck her. Fuck Dodie Bishop. She was a terrible friend. Courtney was a much better friend. But there was a show that I remember watching back in the day called Pelswick, where it was a kid who was handicapped, like he was a paraplegic. I enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't amazing, but I thought it was okay. Nickelodeon outsourced way too many shows from Canada around this time in the 2000s. I remember a show that aired briefly on Nickelodeon, but there were two shows that aired briefly on Nickelodeon, but were more on Nicktoons. There was Yakety Yak, where there was like a talking yak.
Yes.
I enjoyed it, but there was also another show where it was called My Dad is a Rock Star. And it was about a kid who has a dad that's a rock star. Funny enough, the rock star dad, I was looking up who voiced him, and it turns out same voice actor as Cable in the X-Men 90s animated series, as well as the announcer of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I'm not kidding. Same guy.
That's him.
Same guy.
Sick.
So
It's crazy.
yeah. But yeah, Nickelodeon had a really good amount of shows. But yeah, live action, Pete and Pete's my favorite live action show. Clarissa Explains It All is like a close second. Kenan and Kel's like third. Nicktoons, like Hey Arnold's up there. Invader Zim. Doug. I fucking love Doug. The Disney Doug's, I don't like the Disney Doug. But the Nickelodeon Doug, I love it.
Yeah.
But Rocco is my all-time favorite. Oh my God, Today's Special. I remember Today's Special. And I remember you can't do that on television so much with the slime. But does anybody remember when Nickelodeon would do Slime Time Live? They did multiple versions of it in one in the 90s and one in the 2000s. They would do Slime Time Live where you would
I
call,
believe I do remember.
like you would call in and then to see like somebody get slimed, like someone from Nickelodeon or any kids get slimed. I remember I think there was I'm not sure if I'm actually remembering this correctly, but I think there was like something called You Pick, and then they had like this guy dressed up in a superhero called Pick Boy.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, some guy dressed up as a superhero, and he was just going to be like in like their commercials, and he even was in like His Choice Awards as well. He was like he's just being a funny guy, just being like
Well,
what everyone is supposed to be like looking up to or something. Like you pick like shows and whatnot, I believe.
Well, in the 2000s, he was basically the equivalent to what we had back in the 90s. There was a character named Stickly.
Yes.
I remember that one. Yep.
Yeah, because Stickly was like
okay.
a character from like the mid 90s. Like he had his own show where like they would have random shows that would air alongside him on the block for a couple of years. I think they stopped it in 97, 98. But I remember like Stickly, like it was just basically a popsicle stick figure that had like a nose and eyes and everything. And I think that the way that they would treat him was basically like kind of the same way that they had those Mr. Bill shorts. But yeah, I remember those. I remember Stickly growing up. Mail to me, Stickly, P.O. Box 963, New York City, New York State, 10108. That's what I remember, like, just seeing that every single day when I was a kid, like Monday through Friday, where they would have, like, the Stickly show, like, they would have reruns of popular shows. You would call in and sometimes like they put Stickly on a wheel, you would see where he would land and it would be a different show each time. But I remember watching way too much Inspector Gadget on Nickelodeon back when I was a kid. And I loved that show growing up, but as I got older, I'm just gonna say this right now, Inspector Gadget is not a show you could binge watch because it's so formulaic. It's always the same.
Yeah.
It's always the same format. It starts off with whatever is the theme of the episode for that day, and then like you would see Inspector Gadget, Penny, and Brain like engaging in whatever activity that they're doing. Then you see Dr. Claw about to plot something big, and then you see the chief come in, no matter where, if he's in a trash bin or a mailbox or something, and then like he gives a letter that Inspector Gadget has to read, which always ends with this message will self-destruct. He rips it, he crumbles it up, and he's like, "Don't worry, Chief, I'm always on duty." And then he just tosses it in like trash bin or whatever Chief Quimby was in, and then it explodes. And then after that, it's just like however the episode plays out. Then in the end, they catch the crooks, but Dr. Claw gets away, or at least like they would stop him. They're still trying to chase him, and then the thing is that Inspector Gadget never was the one that or rarely was the one that catches the crooks. It's usually Penny and Brain.
Yep.
It's always Penny and Brain, and and Inspector Gadget would take all the credit.
It just goes to show that he's just not a good inspector.
And then after the episode ends, they would basically have like a PSA of don't do this, don't do that, and then that's when the show ends. So you cannot binge watch that show because you're gonna get bored easily. It's the same format, over and over again. So yeah, that's where I first watched Inspector Gadget. That's where I watched Heathcliff. That's where I watched a lot of shows that you would normally see anywhere else, but Nickelodeon was like the big place to watch them at the time. Muppet Babies was another one, Beetlejuice, and one more show that I will say is one of my favorites on Nickelodeon. is the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, where it was all CG. Originally, Jason Biggs was Leonardo for the first 2 seasons, but he got fired from the show because he ended up like saying some nasty things on social media, which he later apologized for. And he was replaced with
Yeah.
replaced with Seth Green, which, in my personal opinion, is a much better choice.
Yep.
Yeah,
Seth Green.
it's my all time favorite Nickelodeon, well, all time favorite like Ninja Turtles TV series, even more so than the '80s cartoon or the 2003 show. I haven't seen Rise, and I haven't seen the new show that came out that's based off of the recent movie. I did watch the recent movie though. I thought it was really good. Mutant Mayhem was fun, but I haven't seen the new show yet. But they have since integrated Ninja Turtles into a lot of Nickelodeon video games, like Nickelodeon All Star Brawl 1 and 2, and the Nickelodeon kart racing games. Which, not gonna lie, the Nickelodeon kart racing games are actually pretty fun. Granted, the only issue I have with them is the fact that those games like have very tight turning. It gets to a point where you fucking like have to fucking drift at a certain way. Like, although it's better in 3 than it is in 2. All right, but yeah, all right. So now, as much as all the fun stuff about Nickelodeon, like I enjoy talking about, there's unfortunately some very awful things that has gone on Nickelodeon.
Yep.
So Epic Man, I'll have you go first for this one. What were some of the worst things about Nickelodeon that you know about? Because I have a lot to say, but I want to hear what you guys have to say first. So I'll go with you, Epic.
Okay, so like, you mean like controversial stuff? Is that what you mean?
It's mainly the controversial stuff that's gone on over the years. Because there's a lot.
I guess, I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of them, but I will say that even for me, when I was a kid, I don't really pay attention to that stuff back then because obviously I just
when you're
really didn't notice when it happened.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you're not gonna know.
No, not many people would know because mostly stuff would happen behind the scenes, or it just got brushed under the rug and no one wants to talk about it. All that stuff was just people just never really look into it and just never thought about it. Like, I mean, hell, John K. with all that with Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, not many people know about it. I mean, surely, of course, it's going to be some people would know about it when they look into it back then, but yet I was not aware about everything or even at all for what happened back then. Like, for me, I mean, I guess it would just have to be like with SpongeBob, I guess, with the creator who passed away.
Yeah, Steven Hillenburg.
Of what was it? The case that he had that led to his death. What was that again?
Let me actually take a look.
Because I know it was something about something in his head that happened. I think, but it was really it was tragic, and to see him.
He had Lou Gehrig's disease and ALS.
Yes, ALS. Like, that was a tragic thing that happened to him, and seeing him passing away and then SpongeBob going on was just, honestly, it makes me feel sad because I love seeing SpongeBob a lot when I was a kid. All the early episodes, the early seasons were just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
And watching the movie, the first SpongeBob movie, was so emotional. My dad took me to the movie theaters to watch with him at the time, and it was so good. I laughed, I cried, I was enjoying the hell out of it with my dad back then.
Yeah.
And it didn't notice, like, because I mean, I wasn't aware about how, when SpongeBob kept going and going, I was still enjoying whatever episodes they got afterwards, where even Steven Hillenburg wasn't even involved with the show anymore after the movie. So I mean, I just assumed like he was involved, which he kind of was. He just, I guess, supervises or something, that he was like executive producer, I think.
Yeah.
But him being not involved as much, I kind of start understanding when it happened, and how the show felt like it was going to feel like it's not the same anymore. But yet I just still watch it. I still love the show, only up to a certain point. That is just I guess it would be it was somewhere in around the 2010s,
Yeah.
around the middle 2010s. I guess it would be it would be my time where I said, okay, the show is getting a bit stale for me. I think I'm gonna have to get off. And that goes the same with Fairly Odd Parents and a lot of other shows that come and go.
Yeah.
And I felt like they're not showing as much shows like they used to, because there were a lot of great shows back in the 90s and the early 2000s. Like there were so many good shows that I would never stop watching. But seeing SpongeBob becoming stale just making me feel sad, and just really disappointed with Nickelodeon just not letting it, just stay down, because really they could have just leave it off, and maybe they could cook it up again and try to make it better. But just it just keeps going. It feels like they're really milking the show a lot, which honestly that is understandable why studios would do this. But yet I mean, it's fine to do this, but yet at the same time, couldn't you just get something better to do with it? Because really, it feels like everything just feels out of whack, where the character is becoming too expressive, too cartoonish. Even though this is a cartoon show, but I feel like the early seasons were understandably grounded, where the characters can be goofy, but at the same time they can be relatable, like with Squidward and SpongeBob, and just how everyone acts around each other. And I love seeing all the characters doing what they do, and just doing their daily lives under the water,
Yeah.
and everything. And so I felt that it's getting stale, but even then, I still watch it, just only for a certain point. So that was like my moment where I felt like that was the worst thing I felt for Nickelodeon. But even then, I know there's always a lot of other things, like with Ren and Stimpy with John Kay, and I believe also with what happened with the Loud House was Chris Vino, I believe that's his name, Chris. He he oh, he did some really bad things behind the scenes, and
He
he was
did.
kicked off the show. And I mean, I did watch that one video with about him, what he's been doing, and he's been turning into Christianity, and he's trying to fix his mistake, which I can say good on him, and I'm glad he's not doing any more with the cartoons. Just if he wants to move on from that, then that's fine. He at least tries to say he is sorry, but who knows? But at the moment right now, he's looking like he's doing fine. Just
Yep.
really hope that we should really get better at about how we treat with creators and what the stuff they do behind the scenes, and we should like be aware of the things they do behind the scenes and make sure we don't see that shit again. But that's gonna happen because just how the world works and everything is so shit. But it's always gonna be so shitty, and Nickelodeon is not the exemption out of it, because really we've seen a lot of stuff from Nickelodeon that just felt like, man, what the hell just happened?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
they've done a lot of stuff. So yeah, like that's gonna be my take, honestly. So with SpongeBob mostly, but there's a lot of stuff that I know I'm gonna hear from you guys. So yeah, let's go.
Yes. Rick?
Do you want to? Could you repeat the question for me so I can be sure that I'm going down the right road here?
Okay. What were some of the worst things about Nickelodeon that you know about?
Okay. I'll jump in front of the bullet on this one. I think we all know
Yeah.
where we have to go here, which it's I guess it's kind of a coin flip. There's probably the two biggest bombshells, but I think the one that everybody kind of knows about at this point would have to be Dan Schneider.
Yeah.
And long stretches of
Yeah.
abusive workplace behavior with his colleagues, creepy shit, dealing with his barely 18 and sometimes under 18 people that were around him. Well, there's the questionable, the one that's I guess a bit more hearsay-ish, but the foot focus stuff, which not yucking anyone's yum about whatever kind of thing they're into generally,
Yeah.
but the reframing of just how frequently there were cameras focusing on children's feet in Nickelodeon shows became really uncomfortable to kind of see just how prevalent it was.
Yeah.
There was kind of a
Yeah.
lot. I think I'm gonna get the name of her book wrong. Jeanette McCurdy,
Yes.
from iCarly and Sam and Cat, put out a book last year, maybe the year before. I think it's called I'm Glad My Mom Is Dead.
Yeah, I'm glad
Or
about
something
that.
along
Yeah.
those lines.
You're correct. Yeah.
Very like revealing and kind of cathartic driven work to kind of explain the situation that she was in during those times where I feel horrible for so many of the people that were involved. I feel arguably the worst for her, who wound up being stuck sort of pinned between dealing with Dan Schneider and some of the other there was I can't remember the person's name. There was another person involved with those shows at the time who was much more, I guess, upfront in the actions and things that they did, to the point where Jerry Trainer, who is a legend, a fucking hero, would
He is awesome.
stay after shooting for extra time, would specifically make a point of like not leaving his co-stars' sides, especially when someone would be like, hey, can you come into my office for a bit? Jerry would insist on being present for as much of that as possible, sort of taking a guardianship role over them, which is just, you couldn't ask for a better role model out of him in that kind of a scenario.
The best brother.
Yeah. And yeah, there's, obviously there was Quiet on Set last year.
Yep.
Which carried the extra kind of bombshell of Drake. Was it Drake Bell?
It was Drake Bell.
Suddenly showing up, who himself was also mired in a lot of really intense controversy for stuff that he had done, which, like, not to go down the road of like, psychology and stuff like that, but abuse is a cyclical thing.
Yes.
Like, stuff that's done to you perpetuates. It's a big problem with like generational stuff with people who are abused at home. And I'm sure that wound up probably influencing, what he wound up himself doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, it kind of, and I guess also, and to a certain extent, although he didn't wind up being the person to reveal this, but like he certainly helped bring a lot more attention to it in the end. But I'd say Quentin Reviews, who was doing a big retrospective kind of anthology series for years on YouTube, kind of closed it out with a 1-hour video, pretty much specifically focusing on Dan Schneider. He kind of had, you could maybe call it a running gag. It was kind of, it seemed not like a thing that was being done as a joke and more as a thing that was being done out of spite. But anytime there needed to be mention of who was writing or directing the shows that he was discussing, it would just be static on the screen for that period of time, with the obvious implication of who he was talking about, which kind of came full circle in the final and being like, okay, we really need to actually discuss this, because his fingerprints are all over, everything from that era in Nickelodeon.
Yep.
And it was just a period of time where tons and tons of people just started coming out of the woodwork, which is how that stuff happens. I mean, there's a reason that the Me Too movement wound up being as huge as it was.
Yeah.
Is once the dam breaks, it's a lot easier to follow the flow and actually speak your truth and release some of the things that you might have been afraid to make yourself vulnerable by saying before. A lot of women and girls get targeted for speaking out about stuff like that online, and not to make a judgment call between what happens with boys versus girls, but there's a whole other set of implications that comes in when there's allegations of adult men that are being inappropriate with young boys too. So
Yeah.
like I'm getting like emotional just kind of discussing this, and it's like it's such a heavy subject, and it's so awful when it has to happen to something that has so many good memories associated with it, and something that for over 30, almost 35 now years in terms of like what we now kind of think of as Nickelodeon. It's supposed to, stuff like this is supposed to be something that kids can engage with, have fun, and feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So when it gets revealed that this wasn't a safe place or a safe time or any of that for not just the adults but the kids who were involved with that, it's so heartbreaking and soul crushing. It's just so hard to think about, and it really took a lot of the shine off the apple for me for especially the era where Nickelodeon was really producing the most of their live action content, knowing just how much Dan Schneider had his fingers in kind of everything, all of the shows he was involved with, and it's just a level of hurt and a level of just rage that's just all. It's hard to think straight when discussing someone just betraying their station like that.
Yeah.
Like he is someone who was given a lot of trust, and he betrayed that in really some of the worst possible ways.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's very unfortunate, honestly. I don't know, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Ben? Do you have anything regarding the worst moments of Nickelodeon that you know about?
I knew of the Dan Schneider stuff. I knew of some of the stuff with John Kay about how he basically had some issues with Nickelodeon and how he eventually got fired from them.
Yeah.
But I really can't go into any detail that Rick hadn't already done.
Yep.
That I can really bring up about.
That's fair.
So
I'll go into the John Kay thing because there is some more things I will bring up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
and that's another reason is like I figure you said you were going to get into John Kay, so I figured I had to leave that to you.
yes, I do have some stuff. So it goes beyond like him being a fucking creep as he is, because he has been a creep to a lot of women, specifically to underage girls for years.
Yep.
So
Yep.
So back in the 90s, he actually had there was like two girls in two different time periods that he had employed. Both of them were Robin Bird and Katie Rice. Both of them had worked for his company Spumco, and where he had like he pretty much took advantage of the fact that they wanted to break into the animation industry and they looked up to him as the idol, and then like he decided to like get into a relationship with both of them despite the fact that they were underage. Both of them got sexually harassed, sexually abused by him, one of which actually appeared in the DVD commentary segments before for Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, which is an awful rendition of Ren and Stimpy, by the way.
It's so bad. It's so
it,
bad.
it was very bad to the point where like the show got canceled and 3 of the episodes did not air on TV. They only aired, you were only able to see them on DVD, and they're all very bad. But in some of the commentaries right before they started the episodes, they had Katie Rice, who was on there, and I could tell her face, like even though on the camera she was actually trying to be civil and everything, I could see in her eyes that she looked very uncomfortable like the whole time. And eventually like it got to the point where both of the girls contacted each other, and then they posted the allegations, and then like it got to the point where John Kay got completely ostracized by the entire animation industry. Nickelodeon had him as part of like a Hall of Fame, even though it's funny to me that for a while that they actually did, considering the fact that John Kay actually left Nickelodeon on bad terms back in 1992. The reason that he left on bad terms was because throughout the entirety of the first season, and like there were episodes that aired much later than they were supposed to, because he had these tight he just broke deadlines, like the Nickelodeon deadlines. He would go against a lot of the things Nickelodeon wanted to do with the show. And there were times in which he's a perfectionist to a fault. He wanted to make it so that everything had to be like perfect, because he had this mentality where every show that has released in the 80s, 90s, 2000s and onwards all suck unless he made it. Because he is a very arrogant prick. And it got to the point where there were some times where even Billy West talked about how when he would be voicing Stimpy, that he had to do a certain scream that John K wanted, and it took 100 screams until he was satisfied. That would be a huge strain towards your vocal cords.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't have been able to tolerate it.
I would not. Wow.
Yeah.
But the straw that broke the camel's back was there was an episode that actually got banned from Nickelodeon called Man's Best Friend.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
that episode was low.
and the reason they got banned is because because I originally thought that it was animal abuse, but in reality, the reason that it got banned is because of looking at like the reason it got banned, something to do with like Ren and Stimpy beating the shit out of the master George Liquor. His name being George Liquor, by the way. And
yeah, I remember the name.
the first time it ever aired on TV was when they were doing Adult Party cartoon. It was actually what aired first before like the actual show itself, because it was a bad episode. I forgot what episode it was supposed to originally pair up with, but they replaced it with Big House Blues, which was already in the first season. And he got fired for that. And what happened was that he was trying to get Billy West to quit Nickelodeon and join his team. Billy West refused. And a lot of the people who were working at Spumco were pretty much poached by Nickelodeon. And then they made an animation studio called Games Animation, which will later become Nickelodeon Animated Studios. So that was Nickelodeon's first in-house animated studio. They pretty much took a lot of people from Spumco to work there, because Nickelodeon was going to take over the show, which they made like 3 more seasons afterwards. And there were, I believe sometime it was either 95 or 96, there was there was the Howard Stern show. Billy West used to be a part of it. He did like a lot of impressions and voices on there. And John K was a guest of the Howard Stern show. And Billy West had no idea he was there until like he ran into him in the bathroom. And then the whole thing was tense. It was a back and forth thing where like John K was claiming that that Billy West stabbed him in the back, when in reality Billy West didn't want to work with someone that was pretty much abusing him, and he liked his deal that he had with Nickelodeon at the time, because he not only was voicing Ren and Stimpy, but he was also voicing Doug and Roger and Doug.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
he liked where he was at, and it got to the point where Howard Stern was pretty much egging Billy West on, and Billy West was clearly uncomfortable throughout the whole time when John K was on the show. And after that, Billy West pretty much quit Howard Stern's show. Hence the fact that there was a Futurama episode where they went underground and Philip J. Fry was screaming out, "Howard Stern is overrated." Yeah, because he legitimately had beef with Howard Stern after that. And I've seen that, yeah, like Like I just think that the whole thing was fucked up. And but there was another controversy that I do want to bring up in addition to the John K thing, because the fucking John K thing, I'm glad that he pretty much I'm glad people started holding him accountable. I wish that they did it sooner. But the one
You can blame him for the Cal Arts insult existing as well, even though it applied to a completely different art style anyway.
yeah. And it also got to the point where I will say, if there's anything that shows that karma fucking hit him really hard, he actually had like an animation that was done in Kickstarter, and then he finally released it in 2019 called Cans Without Labels, which was about like a bunch of cans that had no labels. It was garbage. I've seen it. It was so fucking garbage. Oh my god, it was awful. But yeah,
I think I recalled that before when that was a thing, and I was like, what is this? Like, why is he doing this? This is so stupid.
there is another controversy I did want to talk about regarding Nickelodeon, and it took place in 2001. So in 2001, Nickelodeon had two shows that debuted that year: Fairly Odd Parents and Invader Zim. But those weren't supposed to be the only two shows. There was supposed to be one more. They were supposed to have an action show called Constant Pain, and it was more like a steampunk style show, like set in the show was supposed to release in 2001, but it was not greenlit, even though there was a pilot. There were two reasons: the events of September 11th attacks. And the other reason is because of the fact that Mika Wright, who is the creator of this pilot, he was pro-union and pro like animators' rights, whereas like Nickelodeon was against like animators' rights, and they were pretty much anti-union for the most part. So there were like that was the reason why those were the two reasons why Nickelodeon did not pick up the show, which it was a shame, because I actually seen how the pilot looked, and it looked really cool. Like, it's like a futuristic steampunk diesel punk setting, and it would, like, the thing is that Nickelodeon would not get an action show till later. I believe it was My Life as a Teenage Robot. It was like half action, half comedy. But the first pure action show they actually had was Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I'm actually shocked that I didn't even bring that up at all.
I was thinking about that earlier, and also I was about to say, looking at images of Constant Pain, the art style is actually quite similar in some ways to Avatar.
Yeah,
like just the way that they do like faces in particular.
Yeah. It actually could have been like a big show on Nickelodeon. Like it could have been a huge hit, but because Nickelodeon decided to just completely meddle with this shit, not to mention like 9/11 being a thing back then, like just didn't help. So unfortunately, like, that show did not get greenlit, and Nickelodeon pretty much rejected so many different shows that either went to Cartoon Network or the Disney Channel. They rejected Phineas and Ferb, which went to the Disney Channel. But to be fair, a lot of people rejected Phineas and Ferb. Disney rejected it twice before accepting it. They rejected the Powerpuff Girls, which at the time was known as the Whoop-Ass Girls.
Oh yeah, I'm almost forgot about the name like that.
That's why Nickelodeon rejected it, because it was originally going to be called the Whoop-Ass Girls.
The Whoop-Ass.
Yeah.
Whoop-Ass.
Oh god.
They rejected Ed, Edd n Eddy. They rejected Adventure Time twice, as well as Bravest Warriors.
Yep.
And I believe
Crazy how that went.
There was another Disney Channel show that I think that Nickelodeon rejected. I don't remember what it was. Like, I know I've already mentioned Phineas and Ferb, because like they wanted to, because here's the thing, Phineas and Ferb, both Jeff Swampy Marsh and Dan Povenmire worked on Rocko's Modern Life around this time. Like they worked, like Dan Povenmire worked on Ninja Turtles, and he also worked on The Simpsons. They worked on Family Guy, but they worked on Rocko. And then when Rocko ended, they pitched Phineas and Ferb to Nickelodeon, and they rejected it. That was back in the 90s, because like they were trying to get that show off the ground for so many years. It took a long time. Nickelodeon pretty much rejected. Here's the thing. Let this sink in. Nickelodeon rejected Adventure Time for a show that did air, Fanboy and Chum Chum, which is not a great show. Not a great show at all. But at least, at least, Adventure Time went to Cartoon Network. But
which is good, but it's just funny to think about. Just wow, they got rid of that for that.
Yeah,
huge L.
They've also rejected The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. They rejected The Amazing World of Gumball. I'm sure that there are more shows that have been rejected by Nickelodeon. Like I said, like many shows that would air either on Cartoon Network or on the Disney Channel. I believe The Proud Family was one of the shows that they rejected before I went to the Disney Channel.
Oh my God.
So like imagine Nickelodeon having some of these shows, like just how they would. I think that they would have been completely different on Nickelodeon. Like maybe some same cast members, different cast. Here's the thing. Adventure Time would have had a different cast except for Jake the Dog. Jake the Dog would have been the same.
Yeah.
Although the person who voiced Finn in the Adventure Time pilot is actually the brother of the actual voice actor.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Star versus the Forces of Evil was another one. Oh wow.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I almost forgot about
Our
that.
versus was actually good.
There was a pilot that got revealed because there was lost media at the time, and then somebody brought it onto the internet, and I got to see it, and yeah, it was just gonna be Star with just a bunch of the a bunch of the creatures from her world going to the human world. She wants to fit in with the humans, but it was just gonna be her and just a bunch of the creatures, and there was no Marco. He was never gonna be in it before. It was just her.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was gonna be on Nickelodeon, and of course rejected.
Yep. And the thing is that with Ed, Edd and Eddy, like the reason that Nickelodeon ended up rejecting is because the creator Danny Antonucci refused to let Nickelodeon have full control of the show.
Makes sense. Yeah. Even though that show was made on a dare.
Yes, because originally Danny Antonucci like did a bunch of animation bumpers for MTV, so.
Which were grotesque and very violent and very gory, which is funny for a guy that makes a cartoon for kids.
John Dilworth, the creator of Courage the Cowardly Dog, did the same thing. Like he made a bunch of random bumpers for MTV at the time because everybody was trying to. I mean, everybody had to start somewhere. So, but yeah, like it was ridiculous how like Nickelodeon pretty much rejected way too many shows. And it would have been interesting to see just like where some of these shows would go. Apparently, I'm looking at like other shows. Apparently, they rejected a show called The Ghost and Molly McGee, which I don't really know much about.
That one's got that one. I love the theme song for that one is one of my favorite theme songs in cartoons.
Yeah, that got rejected apparently as well.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. There's a lot that we don't know. I guess.
I do wonder if there were shows that were rejected on either Cartoon Network or Disney Channel, but ended up on Nickelodeon instead. That I can't find. I can't find. I can't find a list for that. I can only find a list for the shows that Nickelodeon rejected. But, and I don't know if Gravity Falls was that. I don't think so. But it would have been interesting to see if that would have actually aired on Nickelodeon.
I don't recall.
But yeah. Also, I do But yeah, so like now I'm gonna go to the next thing. So how much of an impact did Nickelodeon leave to you? And after this, we're gonna do the community questions. So, Rick, how much of an impact did Nickelodeon leave you?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think. Oh boy. We talked earlier about one of the main goals. I would say, especially in the game show side of things, but the sitcoms probably work for this as well. Where the idea was to make shows that focused on kids, felt like they were for kids, by kids, and I think that they really accomplished that. Like I remember growing up wanting to be on every single one of those game shows.
Yep.
I wanted to be on every one of those TV shows, and I think it really like I would say that Nickelodeon more so than at the time the other offerings were basically just Disney and Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Not just like they're nothing, but like both of those came from a background of despite the nature of like Looney Tunes and Mickey Mouse shorts and stuff, what you would call it maybe like prestige cartoons, right? Like they originally were producing Mickey Mouse cartoons and Looney Tunes as cartoons that were released in theaters that you would go and pay money to watch back when they were first being made. And so like there was always that vibe for a long time of like, oh, well, they're cartoons, but they're kind of cartoons for like my parents sort of thing growing up. Whereas, and this changed when they got into like Tiny Toon Adventures was a great kind of, crack in the wall of that. But Nickelodeon always felt like it was straight up for kids the whole time. It didn't feel like, and it felt like they weren't trying to go to like highbrow with any of it. Like they got silly, they got gross, they got goofy with it. And it was just so amazing to be able to grow up with these shows where it was just like the whole point was to just be silly and have fun. There was often very little of a moral outside of like the they did it lightly sometimes in the sitcoms and in the more dramatic serialized kind of stuff than obviously there was, but like a lot of times it was just like really simple message and a whole bunch of silly shit. And it just I would have to imagine Nickelodeon left some of the biggest impact on me in terms of like my comedy style and like the way that I write and things along those lines. A combination between Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, which I feel like I kind of switched over to in the 2000s, Cartoon Network and like Comedy Central as I got into high school. But I think it, aside from just being silly fun for kids, it also, I think, gave me kind of an appreciation for like silly comedy that I feel like I wouldn't have quite gotten the same way with, Warner Brothers or Disney cartoons the same way.
All right. That's absolutely fair.
That's cool.
That's very cool. What about you, Ben?
In terms of like how much like Nickelodeon has like shaped me or something like that. Honestly, I do remember that I kind of wish that there were times I could have been on some of those game shows. I've always wanted to be on Legends of the Hidden Temple. I've always wanted to be on Guts. Heck, I would have been fine being on Double Dare. But I think it really wasn't that. It really didn't like super define my childhood that much, because I know that as far as cartoons go, I stopped watching Nickelodeon kind of around. Let me revise. It wasn't that I stopped watching Nickelodeon completely. It was more that I stopped watching it exclusively around the mid '90s when Cartoon Network first came into existence.
Yep.
And then I just kind of stopped watching Nickelodeon at all, like around the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I think like the last Nickelodeon show I remember seeing was My Life as a Teenage Robot, and even then I didn't see it all the way through. I only saw like a few episodes. But that's like the last like Nickelodeon original that I remember seeing before I just kind of stopped watching Nick altogether.
Yeah.
I mentioned this in the Twitch chat, like the last Nick original show that I remember seeing like in its entirety was technically Legend of Aang, Legend of Korra, and even then, I never actually saw them on the actual like during their initial runs, because Legend of Last Airbender I got as a DVD box set. I one of my best friends told me about the show, and she really urged that for me to see it, at least in some form or fashion. And the only way for me to see it at the time was to get the DVDs, which I did, and I bought, and I practically binge watched the show. Fucking loved it, fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as Korra goes, I just saw that online because at the time that Korra aired, um, we had basically stopped what we basically stopped watching cable television overall completely.
Yeah.
So
All right.
that's pretty much about it. Yeah.
All right. What about you, Epic?
Well, it would for me to say that it is sort of similar with Cartoon Network, how it impacted my life for just making me feel like a kid and just enjoying all the silly stuff that they did. However, Nickelodeon feels like something I never thought I would feel for like with the certain shows, not just cartoons, but live actions as well. They always make me feel as corny as it is, but it makes me feel relatable, I guess, in some ways with characters and message they always showcase in episodes. Like for me, the one show I guess we never mentioned it here yet. Nessie Classified Schools Survival Guide.
Oh yeah,
That
that's a good
show
show.
was a lot of fun and a lot of things that I guess I would say I learned for me to like get better in school. But I mean, it didn't really impact me that much with school life. But yet, it just looks at me and thinks that you could do so much with your school life if you were like this. But I remember I think about a lot of things where it just makes me feel like, man, imagine me like that, where I know about how school works, and it feels so cool to see with these characters and how they deal with school situations that it could have been fun if I had something like that. But I think that with the tips and the funny shenanigans that happens in that show were just so much fun to watch, and just makes me feel like I'm a part of that kind of stick where things happen and you would learn how school works. And it's just so much fun to watch that show that makes me feel like I learned a lot of things about how school works, and yet I'm having fun with it too.
Yep.
And like, but yeah, but like not just that show, but even with other shows like with Drake and Josh, where you watch it for the funnies, but yet there's some really heartfelt moments that I thought was so impactful for me to feel. Maybe not on a personal level, but it just makes me feel for the characters. Like that one episode where I'm pretty sure everyone remembers
Mm-hmm.
that hurts to watch was Josh was done with Drake, where he felt like he had enough of his shit, where he just decides to become on his own and doesn't want to deal with anything Drake wants him to do. So that made Drake feel like alone, and he gets all the bad stuff happen to him because it was usually with Josh that gets the bad stuff, but even though Drake's always gets the bad stuff, but this one feels like he had the worst day of his life, and he was looking like he was about to cry, and he felt very bad that what he did with Josh, because Josh always has to deal with Drake's shit, but then Drake break down feeling sorry for everything he'd done with him, and everyone felt really sad for Drake, for the character at least, for the character of Drake, just having to break down like that because he felt sorry for his brother to always you know getting in trouble with him all the time and keeping up with it, and it just makes me feel sad because imagine if I had to deal with that in real life. If I had a brother like that, I would just feel sad, because you don't want to feel like sad like that, but it's just supposed to tell you that people can have their downtimes and they don't want to feel sad, and you just want to feel for them because not everyone can be like that forever. People can try to change and kind of do something for the better. But it just needs a moment where you gotta you gotta like you see yourself to see if you can be better than ever before, so that way things will get better. It wants to be better than what he was before, but you know, he just feels really sad and sorry about everything,
Yeah.
and and then the ending happened, and everything went back to normal, and it was really nice. Everyone was feeling for it. It just makes people feel they connected with the characters. They feel like they can learn about things with other things like Nickelodeon shows, certain shows, or even certain episodes of shows makes me feel like I can relate to these characters or learn messages of life and relationships, or just how to get things done or do better than what you usually are. It is so amazing to me to watch some of these shows in live action, or even some in cartoons like SpongeBob, where the early episodes where you can see the relatability with working, living life, and having hobbies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those were the best times of watching when you're a kid, where you just feel like you can do all that stuff yourself and just you know get good and have fun with it. And so I feel like that is like the thing that I feel like that was most impactful with Nickelodeon. It just makes you feel like you really connect with these characters and have fun with them.
Yep.
It's so amazing. Like Cartoon Network can have those moments too, really. But I just feel like Nickelodeon does a little bit more, especially even with live actions as well too.
Yeah.
And they did a good job. Even even though we discussed about with the controversy about that time, but I can say that those are bad. I would say that they should be held accountable for all the stuff that he did behind the scenes for the like Dan Schneider
Yeah.
and everyone that did bad things. But man, I can't help but just say that these shows that they made, they did really mean something for me, for my life, to try to like get better at myself, to learn and to relate in
Okay.
some fashion. So yeah, that's really honestly that's how I feel like it's impactful for me.
Okay. For me, it was like
Yep.
it means a lot because I grew up with it for like a long time, like since like the late '80s when I started watching TV. I have pretty much almost no nostalgia of the '80s because, like, me being born in '86, I barely remember anything. But '89 was like the earliest I can remember. And what I remember was
Yeah.
watching a lot of Nickelodeon growing up. And then it's like I would watch it like over time. They have different things. And it helped cultivate the type of shows I would really enjoy. Because um coming from an era where like a lot of the cartoons were mainly toy commercials for kids to just buy all those toys and all that stuff. Granted, the only one that ever worked on me was Ninja Turtles. And I grew up with the 80s Ninja Turtles, but I never got into Transformers like that. I mean, I was a casual Transformers fan, but never hardcore. I never got into G.I. Joe like that. I've never really gotten into He-Man at all. Or Thundercats. But I would watch Ninja Turtles. I would watch Muppet Babies. I would watch so many different shows that were like on CBS, Fox, ABC, NBC, and then later UPN and Kids WB. But it's like when I got cable, I had Nickelodeon. Then later I would have Cartoon Network. Disney Channel was a premium channel for years until like the 2000s when it became like a basic channel for cable. But Nickelodeon was always where I would watch a lot of the shows. Like it was especially on weekends or weekdays. Like Nickelodeon would always be on. Um, it was a channel my brother and I would watch together. We would have our mutual favorite shows, and then we had some shows where he liked that I didn't like, or shows that um I liked that he didn't like. Um, One show that I feel was very underrated that I forgot to bring up that only had one season and it would only air on weekends because the show got canceled because Nickelodeon and the creators of the show had different ideas of where they wanted to go with the second season, which led to the show getting canceled. My Brother and Me. My Brother and Me was like, I believe that was the first sitcom that had a predominantly black cast, and at least on Nickelodeon. and it was fun. It was a great show, but it only lasted one season. It only had 13 episodes. So because of that, like they would air the same few episodes on weekends, like Saturday and Sunday. They would air like the same episodes each week for years up until like 1988, for just one season. They just stretched that out because Nickelodeon had this thing in which that they would cut some shows early, but would still rerun them for a long time, giving a lot of new viewers the illusion that these are new shows when in reality, like they've been airing for years. That's why they don't like having. That's why they don't really like having like finales whatsoever. And you wonder what's the sad thing I will say in regards to one show that I completely forgot to bring up regarding the controversies. There was a controversy regarding Angry Beavers because they had an ending. The show actually had an ending, but it was never aired on TV. It was never animated, but it was voice acted.
Yeah, I remember this one.
I think that if there was any animation, it was just storyboards and nothing more. But Nickelodeon, when they found out, it was called Bye Bye Beavers. When they found out that that they were doing this as a way to end the show, because the creators were kind of taking shots at Nickelodeon for the way that they were handling the shows as well. Like they completely bleeped out Norbert saying "shut up" to Daggett, and in an episode, like it was a bowling episode, and then they referenced that where Daggett finally told Norbert to shut up, and he said it out loud. But what I also remember was that because like they were supposedly supposed to disappear, and then and then they were trying to tell all the viewers that you'll still see us on reruns. Nickelodeon got so pissed to the point where they would put the show on the depth slot so nobody would watch it just so they can cancel the show. It was a dick move.
It was so bad.
I just wanted to bring that up because it was fucked up that they did this. But yeah,
Black man.
it was. I really like this show. But Nickelodeon definitely shaped my taste with the type of shows I would be into, whether it's game shows, live action, just giving the illusion that like a lot of the stuff that adults would enjoy, like game shows and all that stuff, that kids could get into it too. I wanted to go to Florida growing up. The one year where we could have afforded going to Florida, my dad ended up backing out.
No.
So like,
oh man, that sucks.
I've always wanted to be a contestant on Legends of the Hidden Temple. I've always wanted to be a contestant in Double Dare, Nick Arcade, like all these shows. I wanted to be a contestant. Unfortunately, never happened. And then when my parents split, we could not afford it. And then by that point, some of those shows were either canceled or on the verge of being canceled. So it sucked because I always wanted to go to the Nickelodeon Studios, but I believe they shut that down in like the mid 2000s, and then it was taken over by the Blue Man Group. Now it's an empty space. Yeah, like there's nothing that's taken over right now, but I love Nickelodeon. I watch Nickelodeon nonstop. Like I'm even wearing a Nickelodeon t-shirt right now that has like a bunch of characters mainly from the 90s, basically pre-SpongeBob. Like the pre-SpongeBob era of Nickelodeon, which to me was like peak Nickelodeon. Where most shows I would be into, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? I would be into Clarissa Explains It All, Pete, the Nicktoons that were on at the time, plus the game shows. And I could just sink my teeth into Nickelodeon like whatever I needed to. Like, had a rough day at school, turn on Nickelodeon. Like, things are not going well at home. Nickelodeon was always my escape as a kid. It's always been like something where at least it would make me feel better for the moment. Whenever like I'm having a bad day. But whenever I'm having a good day, watching Nickelodeon did actually make things better for me too. Like that's just how much I love Nickelodeon and just these shows. It's just the culture of Nickelodeon. Like and I've actually wanted to taste the slime. People say it actually tasted good. I've heard.
It would have to, right? If you're going to pour it on that many people, especially kids, the last thing they're going to do is let it taste bad.
Yeah. Like I just wanted to try it out just out of curiosity, just to see how it was. But for me, like Nickelodeon lives on with like my generation of Nickelodeon, like at least lives on in like different mediums like video games, like Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 1 and 2, where the characters would come in. Like it's like it sucks not seeing the Rugrats, like the actual Rugrats being playable, but at least we got Reptar. I fucking love Reptar. Which goes hand in hand with the fact that I do enjoy Godzilla, so it works out. Funny enough, I love Reptar before I even loved Godzilla, but yeah, I would like to see what more things we can get from Nickelodeon. I'm still waiting on what their take on a new TV show for Garfield would be, because there was a test pilot where it looked like it had the same art style as the Loud House, but it hasn't picked up yet. Because like they bought Garfield in 2019, and it got finalized a year later. But I remember just being shocked that Nickelodeon bought Ninja Turtles. Like I remember first reading that because this was right after Disney bought Marvel. Like Nickelodeon bought Ninja Turtles. I'm like, what? So it's like Disney has Marvel, Warner Brothers has DC Comics, and then Nickelodeon has Ninja Turtles. So I would
Feels kind of fitting for the Ninja Turtles having done crossovers with DC and Marvel to be owned by Viacom.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like Nickelodeon to me has been something that means so much to me over the years, and while now like and this is going to go hand in hand with the question, you know what, this is segues into the next question, like the question from the community. Sammy G asked, are you or family members are familiar with the newer Nickelodeon shows today? If yes, what newer shows on Nickelodeon have you watched? The answer to that question is a rousing no. I do not watch modern Nickelodeon because the majority of what you see on Nickelodeon right now is nothing but SpongeBob reruns. But
nothing but slop of SpongeBob with the new ones.
Yeah. And I do, and Clark, I do remember the face from Nick Jr. It's cursed.
Yes, face.
Yeah,
I remember that. I thought that was I thought that was like part of my childhood, like growing up. I remember the face, and I thought it was cute. Honestly,
it was.
Hi there, face here. Boop, boop, boop. Sorry.
It was more of my brother's childhood because, like, that was his generation, Nick Jr., where they had The Busy World of Richard Scarry, they had Little Bear, Franklin, Rugrats reruns.
Little Bear. Yeah.
And then Blue's Clues would come. And then it's like Blue's Clues would come in. I've only watched a few episodes because I was watching with my brother, who at the time, like, he was slowly getting out of the demographic for Nick Jr. at that time. But it's like, I will say I remember just watching a few episodes of that, and then like many years later, like I think the actor who portrayed Steve went onto like Twitter, and he actually made a video to pretty much anybody who's ever grown up with Blue's Clues.
Yeah,
like I remember seeing that, and it's like it was very powerful in a sense where it's like he just wanted to reach out to people just to see like how's everyone doing, and that's just how it was. Like yeah, but yeah, I would go ahead.
No, so I was gonna say, like, because I guess I forgot to mention that I did grew up with Blue's Clues a lot when I was a kid. I mean, my mom made me go have a good like a little baby picture of me with Blue and all the other characters like as a background. And I watched I watched the show so much that I wanted to have my own handy dandy notebook and the crayon just to pretend as Steve to solve clues and gather clues and all that stuff. And I watched so much of it throughout the whole seasons and such, where I remember watching the moment where Steve went to college, and we get the other hosts to do to do the show, and was I was a little sad, but I still watched it anyway because I just love seeing all these characters doing all these cool stuff when you were like a little kid. And even then, like when you grow up, I just grew out of it only like I guess I would say years later, before they even went to become CGI and all that stuff. But even then, that was like years later, but still, like I grew up with it a lot. Like that was like my other favorite thing with Nickelodeon back then, was just some of the preschool shows, like with Dora the Explorer, Little Bear, Franklin, and all that stuff. Even like with Noggin, that was like another network
I
that,
remember Noggin.
that I believe it was. Yeah, like because I watched a lot of shows from there that time too, and I grew up with those as well. So it was really nice.
I grew up. Yeah, I didn't. I watched Noggin mainly because I was watching Ghost Rider reruns and a few other shows. I never got into Degrassi.
Ah, yes, Degrassi.
My sister's big on Degrassi.
Yeah, that was like a big rerun on there too, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Degrassi ended up being a launching point for rapper Drake, who now like has had his ass handed to him by Kendrick Lamar, which yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
anyway, Rick, what is your answer? Have you have you seen anything regarding modern Nickelodeon these days?
I'll be honest, I kind of haven't. I just scrolled through the list to see like if any of the names ring a bell, other than like legacy revivals or stuff brought over from elsewhere. Like I didn't realize that that they brought back the Crystal Maze at some point, like a couple years ago. Yeah,
Really?
I like 2021-ish. I saw in there.
Oh shit! I'm gonna have to. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, 2020. Oh boy. Well, it came and went in January to March 2020.
Oh, I knew they did a revival of like the Legends of the Hidden Temple for adults, but that only ran for like what?
That
Fucking one season.
actually,
Oh geez.
that was I think that, but there was also a movie adaptation.
There
of
was.
it. I don't know if you remember that.
I haven't
But
seen
I've
it.
never seen
Was
it.
there.
I do know the live action movie. I never seen it, but I am aware of the movie. I know that they did a revival of Legend of the Hidden Temple, but it only ran for like 13 episodes.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't gonna last long.
yeah, that's
Oh,
unfortunate
wow.
too, because I'm like, I was clamoring for like a revival for years, and they finally fucking did it, and then it ran for like 13 episodes. They said, okay, here's your revival. Be done with it.
It wasn't. Apparently, it wasn't good.
Yeah, sadly seems to be the case for a lot of these revivals. They show up, people go, yeah, not a lot of heart really got put into this, huh? And they go, no, and then that's just it.
It was a money
like-
grab.
Yeah.
There was one for Double Dare that came out not a while ago. They did a revival on that one.
Yeah, I believe.
Interesting.
I believe like they had WWE superstar Xavier Woods on that.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
He'd be kick-ass for Nick Arcade if they ever wanted to bring that again. I think they already brought it back once.
Yeah, like, yeah, the thing is that would be,
Yeah.
he said that would be his dream come true. Well, one of his two things that would be his dream come true, between that and running a Golden Girls convention.
Oh, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I have a nephew and a bunch of nieces, and I was like, there's got to be something from this list that I've seen, and nope. There's a lot of Paw Patrol going on over there, and a few other cartoons, but not really anything off of Nickelodeon.
Yeah, if I had kids,
Yeah, Paw Patrol's popular.
if I had kids, I would not really let them watch Paw Patrol. Instead, I would let them watch Bluey.
Yeah, I would probably do
Yeah,
the same.
yeah, Blue's good.
Yeah.
Blue's really good.
Yeah. What about you, Ben? Have you seen like anything regarding modern Nick or no?
No.
Okay. Epic.
Okay, look, I mean, I'm just gonna straight up say no. But the thing is, I've seen the clips with new SpongeBob episodes that I thought they were kind of funny for what it was, but just just thinking about like with whole episodes that would have been better, but just they don't land ever. Only like certain clips that I thought with the newer stuff, I thought they were kind of funny. Like like that one episode, and it has Bubble Bass from the earlier
Oh
episodes, like with
God.
the pickles. He was in it, and Patrick was straight up just yelling at him, and it was so hilarious. And then they just shot another scene of him, but with a real person's face on his face, and I thought that made me laugh a lot. And I don't know what the context was, like why was he there? Why was Patrick being a piece of shit to him? But I
Yeah.
didn't care. I thought that was hilarious. Like I thought certain moments from the new episodes, I thought they were actually pretty good. But just no, I would not watch a whole episodes of the newer ones because really they don't. I don't feel good, nor do I feel like they would have any meaningful things to make me want to watch everything about it. So
Yeah.
no, I have not watched anything new with them ever.
The only new show that I want to see, and I don't even think it even airs on Nickelodeon proper, but it airs on Paramount Plus, and that would be
Uh-huh.
Tales of the TMNT, because it's the continuation of the Mutant Mayhem movie, but on the TV show.
Yes.
The only negative
Yeah.
people seem to have about that show is the fact that they did not get Jackie Chan to come back and voice Splinter like in the movie, which I understand, but they did not get anybody to sound
Yeah.
like him apparently.
Yeah. No, because I mean, obviously he's gonna be a busy man, so I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be voicing as him at like in a TV show where they're gonna have to do continuous episodes. So
Yeah,
really, it doesn't surprise me.
yeah. Other than that,
So I
go ahead.
will slightly revise my answer earlier. I did see some of the TMNT stuff, both the 2012 show as well as Rise and the Tales of the TMNT.
Yeah.
I have seen some of that. But in terms of like watching it on TV, I haven't had cable television since 2015.
Yeah.
So any of that stuff that I have seen, I've seen online.
Mm-hmm.
We did. This was more of a. So my stream team over on our site, we used to do this thing called CQ Riffs, where we would kind of do like a MST3K style thing, where we would take like either a movie or some like episodes of a show or whatever you have, is some footage of like even like bad video games. I've done something like that before. I was the one who recorded the footage.
Yep.
And then we would just kind of sit back and basically we would just snark at it.
Yep.
and make commentates. One of the episodes that we did way back in the heyday was we ripped on breadwinners.
Oh boy, I've heard of that show. That show was not
That
good.
show. Oh my god. I do not
But-
want to talk about that, but I know that shit.
But yeah,
Let's see.
that's pretty much like the long and short of like relatively recent that I've seen.
Yep. The next question comes from Professor Icepick. Did any of you ever get the Nicktoons Network? And if so, what was your favorite piece of original show like that did not air on Nickelodeon, but it only aired on the Nicktoons Network? Yeah, I actually did have that for 1 year before like we had to cut some of the extra channels off, and I've seen a couple of shows on there. I've never watched Cornel and Bernie, which was also known as Watch My Shops. There were some other shows on there, but I mainly tuned in just to watch the shows that I remember watching. So for the year that I've had it, anything else, I've never watched random cartoons because that was after I had to unsubscribe from Nicktoons. Rick, what about you? Have you ever had the Nicktoons Network?
I don't think I did. I was checking through just see if any of it jogs my memory. I don't think I did.
All right,
I don't have more that I can answer with that, unfortunately.
that's fine. Ben, what about you?
Nope, never had it.
Epic Man.
Yes, very yes. Actually, I have the channel part of with my cable with my parents back in the day with Optimum. Yeah, we had the channel, and I watched the hell out of Nicktoons Network. Whenever there was nothing cool or good, I would say, or even if there was an episode I already watched on Nickelodeon, I just go straight to Nicktoons. And I would say I watch a lot of Nicktoons, maybe a bit more, only during a certain time. I think it was like around the 2000s or even early 2010s, where I just watched some of the original shows that they were airing. Like, for instance, they had my they had Speed Racer, The Next Generation. They had Yakety Yak. They had Conir and Bernie. They had Free Delivery, Shuriken School, and then there was like and there's this one show that I thought was really cute, but unfortunately the network cut ties with the creator, making fiends. That I thought that was that was really cruel of the network to do, where they like cut ties with them because they didn't think they're gonna go with it for as long as they wanted to for giving more episodes. So they only gave the author, the creator, only 6 episodes, and afterwards they took the rights of the show and they couldn't make any more of it. So that was honestly really scummy of them for them to do that to the show. Um, so yeah, but that show was really good though, even then still. But I would say my favorite, and I have yet to mention it, but I'm gonna say right now, Kappa Mikey.
Oh right, yeah, because that was the one that had
Kappa Mikey.
because I remember that show having Sean Shamel as an anime character in that, and he uses Goku voice.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Indeed. Like it was like just a bizarre show where a guy from America going to Japan, and Japan looks different for in terms of animation wise because they use pretty much anime style of animations in Japan. But yeah, Mikey, he's drawn like he's just a cartoon character, like just all with thick outlines, and his body moves just more smoothly than in Japan. Because if you guys don't know, I remember this a little bit when I was like in class for anime. There was a thing where it says that anime uses less frames than it is in cartoons, so that way it can be easier to make some certain shots in anime. So they would make them look choppy to do like expressions or movements and whatnot. Yet they would make things look smooth, but they use less frames in order to make it work. And so with Mikey, he just moves like really fluently, like he has a lot of frames. So he would just look and feel different when you look at him. And he doesn't do the anime expressions like you always know with the teehee or kawaii and all that stuff. He's just his own character of what just him being a normal guy in a world of Japan. And I would say like that is like my one of my favorite shows of all the Nicktoons Network, which next to for Cornel and Bernie, because that show I would say I love it a lot because of the art style and the art directions, where it was all like I would say a little bit like abstract, where the backgrounds are like really colorful and saturated, and it blends in with the world of Cornel and Bernie, and I love it. I love it looking at the art style of the show. It's so cool to see, and the characters and everything around it was pretty fun too. I would say, even if like even if it's not gonna be suited for everyone. I mean, it's about a talking dog with a dog sitter, and they all have their misadventures, and they travel and they do a lot of weird and funny stuff. But I certainly enjoyed it, and it was a really good treat for me to watch. And Nicktoons Network was a lot of fun to watch for shows that don't get aired a lot in Nickelodeon, but they would put them in Nicktoons Network. kind of like Disney XD in a way, where if you think about it, or I don't know, maybe Toon Disney, but that was just a different
Okay.
thing back then. But yeah, like I loved Nicktoons Duckworks when I was a kid. It was so fun.
All right. So next one comes from Lemon Square. What was your what were your favorite shows you watched as a kid? We pretty much already answered some of that, but yeah, Rocco is up there. Legends of the Hidden Temple, Pete and Pete, just to name a few. But I pretty much already answered this question.
Yeah, I would say SpongeBob for me, and Rugrats, and yeah, and Drake and Josh, and Keenan and Kel. Yeah, those shows are all my top favorites for Nickelodeon.
Yep.
Uh, Thinking about it, there was actually a show that I kind of remember that we haven't never mentioned yet.
What would that be?
Anyone remember Space Cases?
Yes. That show had
I think so.
that show had Zach from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yep.
Oh,
Hmm.
Yeah, that show was a very underrated show. It only lasted for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
oh, Walter Jones, yes.
Yeah, Walter Jones
Yep.
was in that. Yeah.
Oh, and Jewel State too.
Yep. Funny enough, Nickelodeon for a while had Power Rangers. Like they actually had the rights to air Power Rangers on Nickelodeon for a couple of years, like more than a decade or so. And then now,
Oh man.
but now, like the rights are exclusively to Netflix when it comes to airing it. What about you, Rick?
Oh boy, yeah. I like I said before, basically any of the cartoons airing in the '90s, like from start to finish on that, along with Clarissa Explains It All, Salute Your Shorts, Keenan and Kel, and the game shows from like the first half of that decade too. It was like a golden age for those for the game shows. Get the picture. What Would You Do? Nick Arcade, Nickelodeon Guts, Legends of the Hidden Temple, and Global Guts were all between 91 and 95. And
Yep.
that was like, I think easily and Wild and Crazy Kids was the previous summer going through 92. So like they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half, depending on how you count it, like golden fucking game shows on all at once. And those were usually my favorite just because they were so exciting.
Yes. Next one is from DM21. Which show was your first introduction to Nickelodeon? I've actually answered this earlier. I don't know. I honestly don't remember. Like it, I really don't remember because I do remember the era. I just don't remember what was the specific show. Rick?
Same. Yeah. We talked about this near the top. It would have been when I was like 5-ish, anywhere from 4 to 6 when I started watching. So I don't know which, but I know that I was watching Doug and Rugrats when they were very new, along with the other stuff as they came out. So probably one of those two, probably Rugrats, realistically, in terms of what my parents would have put in front of me. So that'd be my guess anyway.
Ben?
I want to say Double Dare was probably my induction show in terms of, if not Looney Tunes, like the Looney Tunes cartoons, it had to have been Double Dare. That was probably the first Nickelodeon show that I remember as a kid. But that's pretty much that's the earliest one that comes to mind anyway.
Yep. Epic Man?
I honestly don't remember exactly, but I just want to say it had to be a Rugrats or even SpongeBob, because I do remember with SpongeBob, I remember watching the very first episode, Help Wanted,
Yeah.
and that drew me into watching all the other new episodes, like with meeting Sandy Cheeks for the first time, or jellyfishing, and just everything else with the early episodes. I remember fondly when they were out, and I just got into it with more of the other shows from there. But there's just a lot of variety of shows that I know I've watched that got me into it more and more. So yeah, it would probably be either SpongeBob or Rugrats.
Okay. Next one comes from Enigma. What are each of your top three Nicktoons of all time? As in, you can just pop into your TV or computer or phone and watch it all the way through and still have a grand time regardless of when it ended. The top three Nicktoons, that would be Rocko's Modern Life, that would be Hey Arnold, and for the third one, the third one always rotates for me. If I want to get in and if I want to watch more Ninja Turtles, it'll be either it would just be the 2012 series. But if I want to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's also a good number three slot for me. If I'm into Rugrats, it'd be a good number three slot. It'd be Doug. It's always different for me. But if I have to pick a solid third show for me, I'm gonna have to go with the 2012 TMNT series. So those are my three. Rick?
I would probably say Rocco at number one. Number two would probably be Hey Arnold. Number three is a little tougher. I would say it's split somewhere between Kablam, Rocket Power, maybe Angry Beavers or Cat Dog. Realistically, if I had to pick one for sure for number three, I'd say Kablam, I think.
Yeah, Kablam's a great show. Like, honestly, the two segments that stand out to me the most are Prometheus and Bob and Action Link Now. Those are the two.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Like
those are
Power
great.
to melt.
like, fun fact, Kablam was actually where Angela Anaconda actually started. And then it went to Fox Family / ABC Family as well.
I want to say Angela Anaconda had a short that was attached to the Digimon movie.
Yes.
On DVD.
Really?
It might have been in theaters too as like a pre-roll thing.
It was. Apparently, yeah, it was.
Interesting. I didn't know about that.
Bizarre pairing.
Yeah.
Super weird pairing.
Yeah,
It is weird.
it very was. Ben, top three.
Rocko's Modern Life, Kablam, Real Monsters in that order.
Great choices.
I lost his good call too. Yeah.
Epic.
Good one. Honestly, I don't know if I would say I would have them in order because really all these shows are so good to me. So I'm just gonna say off the top of the three I can think of, it would just probably usually Rugrats, SpongeBob, and any of the live action. I would say for me, but the two I would say could take the third spot would be either Kenan and Kel or Drake and Josh. Just any of those for the third spot. But the top two would be Rugrats and SpongeBob for me.
Okay. Next one comes from Mecha Dragon 101. Have you ever seen the show Glitch Text? It's a Nickelodeon show, but it's stuck on Netflix's platform. It's honestly a bit disrespectful how Nick treated that show. No, I have not seen the show. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. I had heard that Nickelodeon did that show and the creators dirty, but I've never watched the show. Rick?
I was about to say same. I have not seen the show. I am familiar with the theme song. I stumbled across it on SoundCloud like 3 years ago or so, or maybe 2 years ago or something. I was like, oh, this is a really cool, just random piece of music someone made, and it didn't occur to me until I looked around later. I was like, oh, this was from a TV show. Okay, but I have not seen the show itself, unfortunately.
All right. Ben?
I'm sorry, kind of spaced out for a second. Well, that was the Glitch Text? No, never heard of it. In fact, I actually did look it up because I saw the question got posted earlier this afternoon, and I took a look at it, and I've never heard of it until today. I've never watched it.
Okay. Epic Man?
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with the show, but I mean, I've never watched all of it or even like look into too deeply with it. But I know one of my friends, Jetty, he is a big fan of the show, and he even like drew some of the characters for himself. But I have seen it. The show is pretty much a sort of a homage for video games because it's about characters that love video games, and then the video game monsters are coming into the real world and all that stuff, and they gotta stop them from taking over that whole shtick. But the cool thing about the show is that they have a lot of references that I was not aware of, where they did a bunch of video game references. Some of them are Nickelodeon references, and even some other ones that are not from Nickelodeon. Like they did with Gravity Falls, or they freaking put Hatsune Miku for some reason. Like, and then there's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which obviously anime references are in there as well. But they did a lot of a lot of video game references because this show is pretty much mainly focuses about characters are going into the video game worlds or trying to stop video game monsters to take over, and just trying to like save the world and all that stuff. So it was a unique show, and I'm really sad that it really just got dealt with a lot of bad times with Nickelodeon because they just did not care about the show, and that honestly upsets me because this show is really really cares about with the references and like things that people care about and love. And then Nickelodeon just says, "Nope, fuck it. We're not gonna show all the other episodes that we were gonna plan on releasing, and so we're just gonna not give it out. And Netflix is just gonna be the one that gonna, they're gonna keep and do whatever, I guess." But it's even worse. Like they said they were gonna put it on Paramount Plus at some point, but sadly that didn't even happen, and they weren't even gonna get the new episodes that they were supposed to put out into Paramount Plus. So yeah, it was really bad that it just doesn't surprise me with Nickelodeon with how they treat some of these shows, especially with because just because it's not as popular as SpongeBob doesn't mean you have to really treat it as shit. Because really, you're trying to get these shows to come live and trying to see if people will like it, and yet you just treat them the worst. And it's like it's crazy to see because it's no wonder like they get the short end of the sticks when they keep getting or no, they keep rejecting the shows over and over and over, and they go to other channels, and they've been doing fine without Nickelodeon, and now look at them right now. They've been rejecting with all these shows, and now they treated this one very harshly, and it sucks. Like really, it's really stupid.
Yep.
Also, one more thing. There was a moment in one of the episodes that I did looked into was apparently, if you guys remember the good old Zaibatsu, the Two Best Friends Plays YouTube group.
Yeah.
Apparently, one of the storyboards or someone worked on the show. They did a cameo appearance in the show, not like talking, but they just put their faces or their character models in the show at one point, only just for a reference because someone was a big fan of the Two Best Friends Plays.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
So it was really cool, but that was but that was honestly a really nice thing, but also a sad thing because this was they put that that cameo in there only for one moment, so they had to cut it out because I don't know, because of the network, or it's also because that was the moment before or after the moment they broke up.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I thought that was cool of them because somebody was really a big fan of the Two Best Friends Plays, the group with Pat and Matt, and they put them in there. And they also put a freaking reference with Jason from Heavy Rain because everyone knew about Two Best Friends with Heavy Rain because that was the funny thing about it because they love talking shit about Heavy Rain. So that was like the funny thing that they had him in there with Matt and Pat.
Yes.
So it was really cool. So like I thought that was really nice.
All right. The next question comes from Homecoming. What Nicktoon would you give a new video game to, like that Rugrats game, and what genre would it be? I'm gonna go with two things. One is a general Nickelodeon like game, and the other one is specific to one series. I want a Nickelodeon RPG, but instead of SpongeBob being the main character, I decided on who would be the main character for this game, and I chose Arnold. And the reason for that is because the storyline would be that Arnold can't always be a pacifist. Sometimes he needs to learn how to handle situations, whether it's on his own or he has to help people. And like and my idea would be he would start teaming up with other characters from different Nickelodeon worlds. Like the first world he would go to would be SpongeBob, of course, but then he would start like traveling to different worlds. Like there would be a character that would just an original character that would help him travel across different dimensions, where he would meet like other Nickelodeon like characters. But it's mainly going to be sticking to Nicktoons, although there would be some exceptions. Like there would be the Hidden Temple, there would be the Aggro Crag from Guts. There would be an abandoned arcade, which would be Nick Arcade. And even You Can't Do That on Television will be referenced as well. Because anytime any of the characters would say, I don't know, there'll be slime. And then, like, You Can't Do That on Television would be referenced. With even the intro to that show, like, plastered in there as well. And as far as a dedicated Nickelodeon Nicktoon having a game, I was thinking that there should be a game for Rocko's Modern Life, and my idea for it would be it would be a visual novel. It takes place after the Static Cling movie, and basically Rocko is adjusting to like like now he's in the future, which is basically the present. He has to like so after being in space for so many years with Heifer and Filbert, now they have to start adjusting to like their new lives. They still have their house, but like Rocko needs a new job because his old job is now just like a comic book machine dispenser. Also, speaking of Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling, props to Joe Murray, the creator, for Rachel Bighead being an openly trans character on the show. Like, props to that. I'm really happy.
Agreed.
I'm happy they did this. So, but yeah, a Rocko's Modern Life visual novel game is something that I would love. My idea would be that it would be more closer to specifically the Ace Attorney games, but the Ace Attorney Investigations games with Miles Edgeworth. Though that's basically where I would base it off of. But in the Rocko's Modern Life world, I feel like that would be like a really good thing to do, because I don't want to do too many platformers. I want to try different ideas for different genres for Nickelodeon Nicktoons, like, because the Rugrats game is a platformer, and I feel like that suits Rugrats, but I don't think it necessarily suits Rocko. There was a Rocko's Modern Life video game for the Super Nintendo, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah. So Rick, what about you? What is a Nicktoon that you think could be a video game, and what genre should it be?
Yeah, so I have two. I wound up grabbing two specifically cartoons that don't currently have any video game adaptations, and also avoiding the platforming aspect of it for the most part. The first idea that I had is Kablam, with the idea of each of the various segments from the show being represented in different genres that kind of match their vibe. Action League now could have like a beat 'em up style segment, or I don't know, Life with Loopy could have oh god, I can't even. But like the idea that like each of the different segments there would have something different going on, or maybe an overarching WarioWare like a thing going on, so that you could kind of get a lot of those moments kind of in there in a really quick sort of fashion. The other one that came to mind was Hey Arnold, but done up as a point and click adventure style game. The reason for that is I think it blends really well with a lot of the storylines from Hey Arnold that usually involved, a lot of the times it involved Arnold just kind of talking to somebody to like figure out what's going on. A lot of conflicts, a lot of things going on that are ultimately, most of the time, resolved by just stopping and being like, hang on a second, let's like just talk for a quick sec, which is one of the the main components to a point and click adventure style game, is alongside kind of the sort of mystery solving aspect of like finding things and bringing them around, but also that there's a lot of dialogue usually that's very necessary as part of that. So that's like that. I think that one is the one that I lean more towards as like if I was back in the '90s as a video game exec from I don't know, Acclaim or something trying to make a pitch. I think that might be what I would go for.
Okay. Ben?
That sounds pretty cool.
So, funny thing, I actually had to mute myself laughing because you mentioned Hey Arnold making it an RPG, and that was exactly the thing I was thinking of myself. The only difference is that instead of being spread across multiple like Nickelodeon products, it was just be centered on Hey Arnold and Hey Arnold alone, more in like sort of an Earthbound kind of thing, but like kind of like leaning more towards a slightly more more realist, more grounded and realistic rather than goofy and absurd.
Yeah.
But I could also see it as as a point and click adventure game, kind of being that actually would probably work better in a way, kind of like Deponia or what's that? What I'm thinking of? Not adventure. What was that LucasArts thing with Guybrush Threepwood?
Monkey Island?
Yes, thank you. Couldn't think of the name for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah. Or it could be like a Telltale game, like, or it's like an adventure game like that too, like choices maybe.
Yeah, that could work. Another one that I was thinking of is kind of doing, and please, let me know if I've already been beaten to the punch on this one. I know we've had the Nicktoons Brawl and fighting game, but what if we kind of do something similar, but instead of like making it a fighting game like Super Smash Brothers, maybe go into like a kart racer or a party game?
Well, we
Just have like a multiverses party game or something like that, if that makes any sense.
well, they already have the Nickelodeon kart racing games.
Fuck, I knew they did.
Yeah.
It was like
3 of them. Well,
And
technically,
we sort of like have a party game, sort of, but not really. But it was bad.
yeah.
okay, well,
Maybe I should get the Madness crew to play it.
I was like,
Maybe.
I was trying to do some quick research on this to see wait, what? I was gonna mention this, but then I thought, wait, what? Please tell me I haven't been already beaten to the punch on this, because otherwise I'm gonna look like a real fool, and a fool I be. So,
Nah, don't worry, it's fine.
aside from that, I guess, did Wild Thornberries ever have a game of any sort?
I'm not so sure, to be honest.
I don't think so. Not that I can recall. No, unless they were like. Well, I mean, they were involved in that party game, but really, they don't have a game of their own.
It
Well,
looks,
that was what I was about to say, because Wild Thornberries could really work as like an adventure series.
it looks like they got 3 games: PlayStation, PC, and
really?
Game Boy Color. Or yeah,
Okay, never mind
PlayStation,
then.
PC, Game Boy Color, and GBA.
Once again, never mind then.
Oh, okay. I guess I never remember those then. I thought
Okay.
they were number one.
Never heard of any of these.
Okay, yeah, okay, never mind then. Disregards that then. So,
My first thought was Rocket Power, and there's like 11 games with Rocket Power. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there were like some Rocket Power games out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I if I had been thinking, I probably would have, probably would have had something more prepared for this, but no, just kind of put on the spot, just right off my cuff. Yeah, no, I really can't think of much of anything.
Yep.
So,
Um.
damn, that is a lot of Rocket Power games.
Yeah.
right, no
Yeesh.
kidding.
Seriously. Epic.
Okay, well, I want to say something first before I even give my answer. Do you guys remember Attacking the Power of Juju?
Yes.
Yes, actually, I've never played it, but I have heard of it. So,
Because that was a game first, and it was made by Nickelodeon, I believe. Or yeah, like because it was supposed to be like with Nickelodeon, they made the TV show out of it, and it didn't do really well at all. So it was just like kind of funny when that question came up, and I was like, man, remember Attacking the Power of Juju when they were just making that as a game, and then the TV show, and then that's it, and they never heard of it ever again.
Yeah.
Like it was like off for me to think about, but yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. But even then, I mean, I had some fond memories of it, but not much. But if a game I would say that would be really cool to have, um, I would say, you know what, fuck it, let's just make an actual party game instead of that piece of shit Nickelodeon Party Blast that came out a while ago.
I was just looking it up and like, yeah, I just saw it. Like, yeah, Nicktoons Party Blast. Okay, so there goes the party idea. Just get shot to hell.
Well,
So,
Like,
yeah.
like the funny thing is, I actually just now suggested it in the Mario Party Madness server.
oh my god!
Like-
oh no! I played that game so many times on PC, and I was so bad at it. But yet, I just know that sometimes the game can be bullshit at times because of the CPU being hard as hell. And yet, I just did not like the game at all. Even though I dig the music tunes, they were kind of really cool. But the gameplay itself, nah. Why can't we just get like an actual proper party game that is sort of similar, like with Mario Party, with like actual party boy of themes of Nickelodeon's characters, locations, and actually have really fun mini games.
I would be
that are
down.
according to certain characters. Like
I'd be
let's
down.
have that. Let's have that. And like make things cool with events and stuff that relates to other characters, and bring in and get the chance that we ever bring them into video games. Like with, I mean, I want to say they could have done enough with Jenny, XJ9. You know, like they could have done more with her a lot.
Mhm.
Or I guess we can also have like we can always have Rocco coming in there. We can also have Heifer, Filbert, and then like there's a lot of bunch of characters we really just haven't gotten the chance with. Like even Ariel Monsters. Like why not bring a lot of characters, or even like a bunch that we have not yet seen them in video game form, or even bring in just for the sake of it. Like we need to have more of these to have with party games, and just have fun with them. Because I would like to see a bunch of variety of characters that we have yet to see to come in. So yeah, like that would be my answer. Just a really fun party game of all the Nickelodeon characters, a proper one at least.
All right. Next one's from Shad. If Doug was never bought out by Disney, do you think the show would have lasted longer or gotten any sequels or spin-off shows? Well, I think what would have happened was Doug would have taken a break after the fourth season, and then a few years later, Nickelodeon would have brought it back. But it would not have any of those changes from the Disney version of the show. Instead, I think what they would have done was it just would have been Doug going to junior high. That still would have happened, but it would have been a different type of school rather than the one that they actually had in the Disney show. Roger would not have been rich. He would still live in a trailer with his mom. He would still be a bully who always ends up, who usually fails at the end. I would also say that Doug and Roger would still be voiced by Billy West. Because originally the reason they didn't bring him into the Disney show is because they didn't want to pay him money. And then it turned out that Billy West actually watched the show and he ended up hating it. He hated the Disney version of Doug.
Ooh.
Yeah. And also the Beats would never break up. They would have, if anything, we would have gotten new music. Mr. Dick's wife would still be the mayor because she was the close to the end of the series for Nickelodeon. She beat Mayor Bob White, so that would still be a thing. But I think that it would have came back, and then like it would have gotten like a spinoff show. I think they would have had a spinoff show for Patty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
What about you, Rick?
I think so. What's ironic is part of the reason that Nickelodeon and Doug wound up parting ways in the first place was that Nickelodeon was leaning in really hard on Ren and Stimpy and the more like active, like higher intensity, action sort of cartoon shows, while Doug was designed to be a lot more laid back and kind of more low tempo. So of course, when it moved over to ABC, it wound up getting a facelift, junior high, and it definitely had a much more like not like a crazy amount, but like it definitely seemed to be a faster paced, more energetic, more colorful kind of vibe with the show compared to the Nickelodeon era. But I think if it stayed with Nickelodeon, either it would not have gotten a fifth season like it wasn't going to anyway, or it would have gotten another. Essentially, if it got another season, I feel like it might have gotten that, and then that would have been it. Because I don't entirely disagree with the stance for Nickelodeon that kids wanted more high active, high energy shows as we were getting into like the mid and late 90s, because that definitely was the case. I don't know how they would have managed to bring Doug back in a way that was faithful to the original version of the show, while still being marketable in a like simultaneous with SpongeBob era, just because that, you know, took off so fast and it really set the pace for so many cartoons that Nickelodeon greenlit and what they were aiming for a while. And I feel like if anything, they would have tried to not like reboot the show, but like reformat it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that people wouldn't have found the same charm or attachment for that version of Doug compared to the original. So I think in the best case scenario during that, most likely would have been it went away for a bit, got retooled to possibly without I forget the original creator's name, but without possibly without their involvement or something, to retool it for a late 90s early 2000s audience, only to have it, I mean, it's sort of I found not so much the movie, but the series for Rugrats, all grown up or all grown up. I forget which one's which there, but
All grown up.
yeah, that one was one that I remember seeing bits for and being like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What is this show? And I feel
Yeah.
like a late 90s, early 2000s version of Doug may have felt very similar in terms of seeing it and like just not recognizing what it was compared to what it used to be.
Yeah. Ben?
Yeah.
So the answer that I have for this would probably be not necessarily. I kind of feel much the same way that, yeah, if Doug was never bought out by Disney, the show might have lasted a little longer. It might have gotten a sequel or spinoffs, but on the same kind of, I should say, on the other hand, I don't really particularly see that it probably would have. I did like Doug for what it was. It was a good show, but I can honestly say that it wasn't necessarily one of my favorites either.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And it was one of those shows that would be like, I could have seen it, easily, lasting a few more years, but at the same time, I could also see it as kind of being one of those shows that kind of quietly came to an end, where his graduation to junior high was kind of left as it was, that they just sort of like ended it there.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty much a good stopping point as it was. Because I didn't particularly care to the changes that they made for the Disney version. I'm going to be honest with you on that.
Yeah.
So, the Nickelodeon era, going from him to the graduation to the junior high, I think was solid in and of itself. It really didn't need to go any further than what it did.
That's fair. EpicMan?
Yeah. Fair. Yeah, I also have I would say the same similar answers. Like it maybe would have gone a little bit longer than it usually was, and even then, I would say that maybe if they would, yeah, like what Rick said, like reformatting it to maybe it would try to fit well for the new audience if they want to get the show going. I would say, yeah, like it would probably need to like make it so that they could try to change it a little bit, but also try to still retain the original idea and the soul of the show, just the people that who used to love watching Doug and even people new people would like to see Doug would actually enjoy the new show or the new seasons for if they even do with still with Nickelodeon. Like I yeah, because I would say like they would just like do you know I guess do new things or seeing what they would do in their later years, maybe not too far in the future, but just after maybe school, maybe to go to college, I guess, maybe who knows, that'd be really cool to see. But yeah, like I would say somewhat similar, like just like reform it a little bit, and maybe we'll see. Hopefully, I would think that could just last a little longer because I mean, I dig the show, maybe not as much as I remember, but I remember it fondly for just being a really nice, cool, chill show of a series. It was really cool to see, and yeah, I would love to see more of it from Nickelodeon like that.
All right. The next question comes from Victaris. What, in your opinion, was the best Klasky Super series? Well, the thing about that is the best Klasky Super series did not actually air on Nickelodeon. No. If you want to know what the best one from Nickelodeon is, that'll be As Told by Ginger because of the deep storylines, how heavy it actually gets throughout the series. No, no, no. You want to know what I think is the best Classy Super series is? It's not. It's nothing from Nickelodeon. Has anyone
I
ever
have a
heard?
guess, but I'm curious.
Has anyone ever heard of a show called Duckman?
Yes.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I did.
I love
I
that
did.
show. That because that show aired on USA Network and they would later air on reruns on the Comedy Central in the 2000s. I love that show. Like that's the show that had Jason Alexander as the titular character Duckman, who is a private eye, like private dick is what they called him for whatever reason. The show was really good.
Detective.
He's like basically the show lasted for 4 seasons. It was very funny. I loved all the banters between like all the characters on the show, like some of the characters not liking each other either. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. But in terms of Nickelodeon, sticking with Nickelodeon on topic, As Told by Ginger is the best Klasky Super show that aired on Nickelodeon. And it's like within like the mid to late 90s to the 2000s, Klasky Super was like the animation powerhouse. That was Nickelodeon's go-to studio to bring in some more animation. And then like now like they're pretty much just kind of not that great right now. Like they don't really do much
Yeah.
these days, but yeah, like As Told by Ginger was their best show. That's what all grown up should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Rick?
Uh, if we're allowing non Nickelodeon ones as possible things in here, I'd almost be tempted to say like, am I allowed to include season 3 of The Simpsons?
Yes, because here's the thing,
Why not? Yeah, why not?
because they worked on the first 3 seasons of The Simpsons as well as 2 episodes of season 4 that were holdovers of season 3.
Yep. Of their Nickelodeon shows, I would have to say Rocket Power. That show was awesome. I loved everybody in the show, and the animation style like matched really well for like the vibe they were doing there. So that'd be my pick if it's got to be a Nickelodeon one.
Yeah, because it fit the culture, like, because the skateboarding culture of the late 90s going into the 2000s, like, they couldn't have perfectly timed that show when they did.
Yeah.
It doesn't hold up well now, but back then, it fit. That's just how it was. Ben,
Sorry, what was the question here?
what, in your opinion, was the best show made by the studio Classy Supo? Because, like, they made Rugrats, they made Auto Monsters and all that. All those shows. Wild Thornberries.
My personal opinion would probably have to be Real Monsters. I never really got into Wild Thornberries, and while I did love Rugrats, I loved Rugrats for like the longest time. But like I mentioned before earlier in this podcast, then they introduced Dill, and then the quality of Rugrats just kind of took a nosedive afterwards, in my opinion. I never really cared for the post-Dill episodes. I never really cared for the second movie and introducing Kimmy. I never really cared for any of that stuff. and I just kind of just stopped watching Rugrats entirely after, like, shortly after they brought Dill in.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Right.
I didn't really care for him as a character all that much. I didn't really feel like he added anything to the core cast that they didn't already have. So,
It was them adding a baby
yeah.
to a show that was already babies, and somehow.
Yeah,
Talking
exactly. Exactly. And so I'm like, the fuck?
Like taking care of a baby as a baby. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's like an interesting topic. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least with like Unreal Monsters, you had Ickis, you had Grum, you had Obliva, you had the Grumble, their interactions with each other and the human world in general, and about how humans were just as scary to them as the monsters were scary to humans.
Yep.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I will.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, responding to the chat, to DM, like Dill Pickles was better in All Grown Up because because he was boring in Rugrats, but in All Grown Up they made him like the weirdo character.
I will say that, yeah, at least All Grown Up did have more interesting things about it, because yeah, now we have a character who's actually a character as
Yeah.
opposed to a plot device.
Yeah, because they
Exactly.
because they gave him a personality.
Yeah.
Whoa! I just saw what he looks like in the reboot show. Oh my good god!
Yeah, it's weird, right?
That is
Like even seeing all the
horrifying.
other characters, like seeing all the other characters,
Like
is a bit weird to see, but you can kind of get used to it when you watch more of the episodes.
Tommy
Jesus! I got flashbang by that. I was not expecting it.
Tommy has Stu's hair and Dill has Dee Dee's hair.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, it's just the
it's
perfect.
weird. It's weird.
It's like I actually like Dill, but in the reboot, like, oh my god, like I'm just looking at it, like when you the picture you posted, oh my god, that's
He
horrifying.
looks like a fucking
Horrific.
alien, dude.
He looks like an alien, yeah. Like, what the fuck?
It's an alien. It's an alien.
Yeah, but yeah, so
Absolutely horrifying.
but yeah, Our Monsters is your answer, Ben.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Epic Man.
Well, for me, it would probably be Rugrats, and even all grown up as well for those two shows. But yeah, like the thing about with me with like that with Rugrats is that it is a show with these babies doing their misadventures, and they just want to. And you see from their eyes, and you see how they adapt to the real world and what they do with stuff. I like that concept where they just make things sense in their eyes and their brain, where not that it doesn't really. It's like they don't know much about adult stuff, but they just get the idea and you run with it because it's funny that way to see how babies think. But even then, that concept and seeing the animation honestly fits for me with Rugrats because I just thought those are like the funniest things I would see with just the characters and just everyone around them, just how they react and behave. It's so funny and just so amazing to watch. So, but I mean, I didn't watch much of Classy Truffaut's other shows outside of it. Like, I have been aware about Duckman, but I never got into it until I watched a video from Rebel Taxi, or Pan Pizza, his name, of
Mhm.
him discussing a review of Duckman, and that got me into it. And so I watched some of the episodes, and yeah, it was really good. Like, oh my god! And even if where the show made some weird design choices of the characters' facial and the designs of their bodies, they're all so weird and disturbing. But yet, it's supposed to be a parody of the real world too, where Duckman has to keep up with his shit with all the shit going around that could correlate with your real life, and even with his family being just obnoxious. But yet he has his character. He does have, like, he's not always this mean or just being a dick, but he does have his moments where he really relates with his family, and of course, with his love life and everything, and just all around things with him, it can be really nice to see for a show that isn't really going towards kids, even though this show would look like it would be for kids, but it's not. So it was really cool to see for a show like this, and I would say probably would be up there if I ever watched it when I was a kid. I would say that would be probably one of my favorite of the studio's animation and shows. So yeah, like that would be really one of my favorites. So that and Rugrats and All Grown Up for me.
All right. And the last question comes from Dari. Would you watch a channel with all the Nick game shows that are revisited, kind of like how Nick Gas was, and redone for a current generation? Like, if they were to do like Nickelodeon Guts, Double Dare, Legends of Hidden Temple. Like, I know that they did a revival for Legends of Hidden Temple years ago, and it only lasted one season, as we actually mentioned. But honestly, at this point, a channel like that would not work today. It like Nickelodeon Games and Sports was like great because like at least we were able to have reruns. We were able to have reruns of the shows that like a lot of us grew up with, and for those who didn't grow up with them, they get to see these shows for the first time, so it was cool. But I don't think that a channel where like they focus on having revivals like that would work in the current generation. So my answer is like I would watch it, but I don't think it will work out. Rick?
More or less the same. I don't know how well it would work in like a streaming era necessarily, but by the same token, one of the most popular series being done in digital media right now is Game Changer over on Dropout. And honestly, there's probably a few of those shows that Samurai should be an amazing host for. I think he'd be perfect. And generally speaking, though, like, yeah, I'd watch the hell out of those, and I would be nostalgic and just like 1% like envious, bitter about like, wish I could have been on it when I was a kid, and now it's back, and I can't be on it now either.
Yeah.
But no, that I love game shows just in general, and I think Nick game shows in particular always kept things very simple. Not necessarily that they weren't like complicated things to do, but like you weren't inundated with rules in the way that a handful of modern game shows are. There's not like 7 different explained rounds of different like thinking through this puzzle of whatever. It's like, no, we got a few very basic things and just go. And yeah, I think it'd be fun as hell to watch. I'd watch the hell out of it if they brought any of it back.
Yeah. Ben?
Yeah, I probably would. Let's say if the game shows were like revisited in terms of like if we had like a revival of these again, and they just kind of kept them all together like in their own block, then yeah, I probably would. I mean, I loved Nick Arcade, I loved Guts, I loved Legend of the Hidden Temple. Double Dare's pretty good. I would like to see these, make a return.
Yep.
But
all right, so that's it?
pretty much, yeah, really. Rick pretty much went into more detail than I would, but nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
That's fair. EpicMan?
I would say that I don't know if I would like to say that me enjoying game shows right now would be something I would be into right now, because I used to really enjoy so much of it back then. But I'm not sure if I would say I would enjoy them right now as of right now. But I wouldn't mind seeing them again. However, the one revival I would like to see the most out of all those old game shows, I would love to see. I would like to see Gus coming back. I love the hell out of that show when I was a kid, because it makes me really wish I was like athletic and trying to do these challenges myself, because it looks so much fun when you watch them on TV. And I could think of like, I can think that they could just do a lot of new cool stuff if they even brought it back with new challenges and climbing on the aggro crack on that like the old days.
Yeah.
Maybe put up some new obstacles or new challenges and all that stuff. Like I want to see new things from it, but it's okay to go back to old stuff too because that would be really cool too. But that's probably like the one show I would say I love to see a revival out of any of the other shows. Like I would love to, I would still like to see another revival of Double Dare or even Legends of the Hidden Temple. Like another one of those would be cool. Although for a channel like that, like to see all of those, not sure if I would say it would be um it would work out like Peter said. But however, I would do say that maybe a channel for reruns of old episodes would be cool to see because I think that would be really nice to see because people sometimes when they have cables, people would still watch some old episodes of other game shows like with Wheel of Fortune or The Price is Right. Like they could watch those and they don't feel like it's new. They probably just um actually no, they probably don't feel like it is old. They probably feel like it is a new episode without even thinking about it because they watch so many of these shows that they probably don't recognize if these are new episodes or not. And just because it's like something they just want to watch just for to pass the time or have them in the background while they do something else like I did before. So I would like reruns of old episodes would be really cool to have for a channel more so than revivals. But even then, still, I will still watch a revival, a show like Gus the most for any other shows out there because I loved the hell of that show
Yeah.
back then. So yeah, like really, just have reruns and revivals, maybe both together. Why not? So that would be a cool idea for that in my eyes.
All right. All right. And with that, that is going to do it for this episode of Sharing with Shellshock. First and foremost, to everybody that submitted the community questions, thank you for that. And also to Rick, Ben, Epic, great to have you on. Thank you so much, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, man. Thanks.
Yeah. So before we sign off, before I get to you guys, I do want to say that I'm going to give a shout out to my good buddy Kurt Dog, who unfortunately could not be able to make it tonight, but he loves Nickelodeon, and I'm going to give him a shout out right now because he also does this game show called Double Nintendo at multiple conventions like MagFest. He's done it at PAX East in the past. Here's his Twitch right here. So feel free to drop a follow as well. In the meantime, Rick, where can we find you?
Easiest place is dpad.fm. Links to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel. We're also twitch.tv/dpadfm. I'm also on Blue Sky with I'll even type it in here because honestly it's too obnoxious to oh god. Oh, that's fine. That's my handle anyway on here. But yeah, Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube. We do all sorts of stuff and love to see you.
Yep. Ben, where can we find you?
So you can find me at twitch.tv/Mr. Ben. That's MISTAH Ben.
Yep.
To say I am always live on Saturdays and Sundays on every other Wednesday. I do have a Discord server, which you are more than welcome to join in. I will go ahead and toss my invite link in. Give me a second here. I will have it in the Twitch chat. So if you guys want to swing on by, always more than welcome to join in on in. I make my announcements on my Discord whenever I go live. I almost never use social media, even though I do have a Blue Sky account. That's pretty much where you're going to find me, is mainly on Discord, if you're not going to see me on Twitch.
All right. And EpicMan, where can we find you?
You can always find me at twitch.tv/TheEpicManWorld, where I do a variety of games and such. But as of right now, I am not currently streaming because my computer is not in good shape right now. But hey, I'm going to get my new one in the future, so I'll hold off to that when I do get the chance. But I am always on Blue Sky as well. Same username, TheEpicMan World. Bluesky.social. You can always find me there, retweeting and talk about fun stuff with anime and gaming and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can always find me there. So yeah, there you go.
All right. Yeah, you can pretty much find me and like I mean mostly on Blue Sky and Discord, but when it comes to content, it's Twitch. With I also have a VOD channel up on YouTube, so if anybody wants to watch any of like and pretty much most of the streams I've ever done, it's on this VOD channel. But feel free to subscribe to it if you want to see like any of my old VODs. But I stream Monday through Thursdays with the occasional Friday and Sunday streams. Usually that starts at 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight Eastern Standard Time. Next week is going to be dedicated to Game Boy platforms. So Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. And currently, the people that I have signed up for this one are Michael McCaw, Mr. Redbeard, Andy Bundy, and the Nostalgia Alchemist. We'll be talking about the Game Boy, because the Game Boy being a very, very high seller for Nintendo, and also following up with the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance, all in one episode. That'll happen next week. All right, so again, thank you guys, as always. Great to have you three on again, and I'm hoping to have you three on again in the future.
Absolutely, hell yeah.
Man.
Yes.
Thanks. I would love to come back here again.
Absolutely. So remember, make sure to take care of yourselves, everybody. Be awesome, stay awesome. Tell your loved ones you love them. May you check up on like everybody as always. Fight for lasting peace, and I'll see you guys next time. And y'all have a great night. Good night, everybody.
Later, y'all.
Bye.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching Sharing with Shellshock Season 4. Your name will be inscribed in the pages of podcast history.